Anyone who has ever been a goblin knows this. Goblins are not only ugly in appearance, but also extremely greedy and lecherous. Even Mother of Ultra would have to cover her rear and hurry away if she showed up here. But you, who were a top-tier assassin in your past life, got reincarnated as a goblin cub after you died. And the one who just gave birth to you is a beautiful white-haired elf. Though childbirth has drained every last bit of her strength, in her dazed eyes, there is nothing but fear and disgust for you. If she weren't so physically weak, she would really want to strangle the baby in front of her. But you have no idea about this right now. You just open your blurry eyes and spot a beautiful white-haired elf right away. Is that my mom? Before you can think any further, another goblin cub that was born just like you moves at an extremely fast speed and lunges towards your mother, getting ready to enjoy the delicious meal in front of it. That's practically suicide. Almost the second this thought crosses your mind, your body already leaps forward. The goblin pinned under you struggles like crazy. So relying on the assassin instincts from your past life, you grab a nearby stone right away and smash it hard at the goblin's neck. Probably because you were just born. You didn't manage to kill it with one hit, so you don't hesitate at all and smash the stone at it again. After that, the goblin only struggles a couple more times, then goes completely still. And right at this moment, the voice of the world rings out in your mind. Congratulations on killing a member of your own species right after birth. You have obtained the skill, Vicious Stone. Killing one member of your own species grants you a +1 strength bonus, but you ignore this voice completely and look straight at the white-haired elf in the corner. This innate sense of familiarity makes you ask uncontrollably, "Are you my mom?" But this hoarse, ugly voice scares the elf into stepping back repeatedly. Her reaction doesn't affect you at all, though. You reach out and touch the umbilical cord connected to your body, and a weird smile appears on your face. I really am your child. But right at this moment, another goblin cub creeps up quietly and suddenly launches an attack on you. Seeing this, the white-haired elf almost instinctively reaches out and pulls you into her arms to protect you. With a loud thud, the fist hits the white-haired elf's body. She immediately spits out a mouthful of blood. This makes her already weak body fall into an even worse condition. The white-haired elf right now has no idea why she protected you. Maybe it's to pay off a debt. Or maybe this child is the only comfort she has. In this hellish lair, being suddenly held in your mother's arms makes you really happy. This warm feeling is something you have never felt before, ever since you were raised to be an assassin as a child. But a drop of red liquid snaps you back to reality. So you lift your head and look up and see your mom with blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. All of a sudden, an unprecedented wave of rage surges up in your chest. Meanwhile, a goblin cub is chattering noisily, as if it's asking you why you are protecting that woman, even though you have no idea why you can understand their language. You don't care about that at all. You pick up the stone and hurl it right at him. After that mysterious voice rang out earlier, your strength has already been boosted, which makes it much easier for you to crush the goblin's skull in front of you. The goblin falls to the ground with a thud and starts twitching non-stop. As an assassin, once you make a move, you have to make sure your target ends up dead until the voice of the world rings out again. You slowly stop your assault. Congratulations on killing a goblin cub. Based on the effect of the skill, Vicious Eater, you have gained 1 point of speed. You took down one enemy first with ruthless, lightning-fast methods, which shocked every single goblin cub present. Even though they are inherently brutal, they have never seen a scene like this before. Even the white-haired elf standing nearby was so shocked by your actions and strength that she couldn't utter a single word. A newly born goblin cub can really possess this much strength and speed, not to mention that ruthlessness and decisiveness against enemies. Even many seasoned adventurers can't pull that off at all. If all this is driven purely by instinct, that is simply terrifying. And he's still my own child. A strange, complicated mix of emotions rises in the white-haired elf's mind. Should I feel relieved or scared? But you don't notice her gaze at all. You just stand up from the ground and wipe the blood off your face. But right at this moment, one of the goblin cubs is the first to snap out of the shock and lets out an angry shriek at you. But almost at the same time, your speed has already been enhanced. And with a whoosh, you appear behind him in an instant, before he can even react. The stone in your hand, already soaked in blood, slams hard into the back of his head. With full force, thanks to your boosted speed and strength, plus your precise knowledge of weak spots, Jenny's blow kills him instantly with a single strike. Right after that, the voice of the world rings out again. Congratulations on killing a goblin cub. Based on the effect of the skill, Vicious Eater, you have gained 1 point of strength. As your strength increases once again, you barely feel any different. Because right now you only have one thought, and that is to kill every single one of these guys who tried to defile and hurt your mom, without exception, after 2 of their kind died in a row. The rest of the goblin cubs finally snap back to their senses. All of them launch an attack at you at the same time. Seeing this, the other women around who just gave birth all huddle in the corners shivering violently, watching the children they gave birth to kill each other. They have no intention of helping anyone at all. All they feel is resentment and rage. They wish all these monsters would just drop dead. Even if that happened, it still wouldn't be enough to quench the hatred in their hearts. Watching the countless goblin cubs charging towards you, there is no panic in your eyes at all. There is only cold, suffocating killing intent. As for the feeling of fear, you have never felt it in your life, because as an assassin, ever since you were little, these kinds of emotions have been erased from you. Besides, both your speed and strength have been enhanced now. Plus you have the skills of the top assassin from your past life. These newly born cubs are no match for you at all. So with your skills, the stone becomes a deadly weapon for slaughter. With every precise strike, you blow the heads off your enemies one after another. Those goblin cubs don't even have time to spot where you are, before they drop to the ground one by one, becoming the nutrients that make you stronger. At the same time, the voice of the world keeps ringing in your mind nonstop. Congratulations on killing a goblin cub. You have gained 1 point of strength. You have gained 1 point of speed. You have gained 1 point of constitution. After you kill the 10th goblin, there's no need for you to keep hiding anymore, because you have been enhanced more than 10 times by now. There is already a decisive gap between you and these newly born goblin cubs. This is completely a one-sided slaughter. One of the goblin cubs, after seeing his kind keep dropping dead in front of him, finally realizes the huge gap in strength between them and starts running around trying to escape. One goblin cub even hides behind his own mother, using her as a hostage to warn you not to come closer. When the woman sees you, who looks so terrifying, walking slowly towards her, she starts begging desperately with a look of utter despair on her face. It seemed that in that woman, you caught a glimpse of your mother.
So you stopped in your tracks.
The baby goblin behind her saw you stop and thought he was so clever. He then grabbed the woman by the hair and started yelling arrogantly. The pain made the woman realize that the goblin was in front of her. Wasn't the one behind her a goblin too? Thinking back to the nightmares of those days, a burning, overwhelming hatred for goblins rose in her chest. So the gravely weakened woman cried out, "Kill him! Kill me along with him!" "Please," the woman begged helplessly and desperately. All the women present could relate to her suffering. "Kill these beasts! Kill me!" Faint, desperate pleas echoed through this stinking, foul place. Right now, you seemed like a hero to these women, but that didn't change the deep-seated resentment they held for goblins. One plea after another, fragile cries for justice, were only met with laughter from the baby goblin. He was still clutching the woman's hair tightly, then slowly poked his head out, wanting to get a look at you, who had been so arrogant just now. However, what he saw was a rock flying straight at his face. With a sharp whooshing sound, the baby goblin hiding behind the woman had its head burst open like a ripe tomato on the spot. Then the voice of the world rang out again. Congratulations. You have killed dozens of your own kind while still a newborn. You have unlocked the impossible achievement. You are now granted the exclusive skill Predation. Your lower tier skill Gluttony has been merged into your exclusive skill Predation. Right now, you can clearly feel the changes in your body. Even your blurry vision has become a little sharper now. The white-haired elf who witnessed the entire slaughter was completely stunned. Is this really my child? Even a demon wouldn't slaughter dozens of their own kind right after being born, right? The white-haired elf was completely confused. Even in her long, ancient memory, she had never heard of anything like this. You stopped as your body changed and slowly opened your eyes. Right now, besides you, there were only 2 goblins left alive. They were staring at you in terror, as if begging for mercy, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing non-stop, trying to gain your pity with such a humble gesture. But this trick was wasted on you. Because in your eyes, once an assassination target is confirmed, nothing can shake your resolve until the target is dead. So you lifted the rock without hesitation, But just as you were about to swing it down, a vicious, triumphant grin suddenly spread across the groveling goblin's face. He let out a sharp scream, and his entire body turned black, melting directly into the shadow. When he reappeared, he was already right behind you, and reached out his sharp claws at you. Your mother saw this and shouted for you to watch out, but almost at the same time, you struck backward without turning around, smashing the rock directly into his head, even without your mother's warning. You would never be assassinated by such a cheap trick. As the goblin's body fell to the ground, the familiar voice of the world rang out again. Congratulations on killing the baby goblin. Based on the effect of the skill predation, you have obtained the opponent's skill, Shadow Stealth. You remained unmoved after hearing this, and shifted your gaze to the last remaining baby goblin. But just then, the old wooden door creaked open. 2 adult goblins walked in next, and behind them followed a goblin shaman holding a staff. After they entered the room, a strong stench of blood hit their noses. Then they saw a shocking scene. The room that was originally used for breeding had turned into a morgue. The ground was strewn with baby goblins, corpses. At first, the goblin shaman thought it was the work of those breeding slaves. But when he looked at the women huddled in the corner, trembling violently, he immediately rejected that idea, leaving aside the pain after childbirth that would make it impossible for these slaves to even move. He had also placed a curse on all these women, so there was no way they had the strength to harm their precious baby goblins. But just then, a shout caught their attention. In a hidden corner, there were still 2 baby goblins alive. The only thing off was that the standing baby goblin was now lifting a blood-stained rock, about to strike the other baby goblin sitting paralyzed on the ground. The goblin shaman was the first to notice something was wrong, and shouted stop. The adult goblins beside him heard the order, and moved immediately. Seeing this, you also sped up your movements, but you were still a baby goblin, no match for adult goblins. Just as the rock was about to fall, a large hand swatted the rock away. The other adult goblin tried to grab your foot, but you dodged nimbly. You then kicked out mid-air, hitting the rock that was still in the air. The rock then flew at extreme speed and pierced through the baby goblin's left eye, making him roll on the ground screaming in agony. Such impressive combat skills made the goblins who came to catch you freeze on the spot. Is this really a newborn baby goblin? Even an experienced veteran goblin probably couldn't do better than that. After you landed, you saw that the baby goblin was still alive and decided to finish him off without hesitation. The adult goblin nearby saw this, snapped back to his senses, and tried to grab you. You threw a handful of sand from your palm, which immediately blocked his view. Then a rock flew accurately and hit one adult goblin right in the eye. As he let out a miserable scream, you were already standing right in front of the injured baby goblin. But just as you were about to finish the job, the silent goblin shaman made his move. The staff he had been charging power into emitted a faint green glow. Countless vines then sprouted from the ground, tying you up in midair before you could react. You couldn't move an inch. You stared at the vines binding you, full of confusion. Where did these plants come from? Why are they moving? And why are they wrapped around me? This illogical phenomenon confused you greatly. You then moved your gaze away from the vines and landed it on the goblin shaman holding the staff. His staff was still emitting a faint green glow. The adult goblins saw that you were bound and slowly walked towards you, holding a wooden club. With a vicious expression, they swung the club hard at you, who were tied up by vines, wanting to kill the baby goblin in front of them, who had blinded one of their own. But just then, the white-haired elf suddenly rushed out from the corner and pulled you into her arms. You had been struggling violently, but when you felt your mother's warmth, you froze immediately. This feeling was so gentle, it made you relax unconsciously. But just as the club was about to fall, a loud shout suddenly stopped the goblin. He turned around angrily, looking at the goblin shaman who had called him, "You bastard. Why are you stopping me? He killed dozens of our people." But the goblin shaman replied calmly, "I've already informed the general. Whether this baby goblin lives or dies is up to the general to decide." Moments later, he walked over to the dying baby goblin and started healing its wounds. Luckily, it only lost its left eye. If the blow had landed a little further over, this little guy would have been dead for sure. When the adult goblins heard the mention of the general, they tightened their grips on the wooden clubs in their hands. No matter how furious they were, they wouldn't dare lay a finger on you. The Goblin General is the leader of this goblin nest, a supreme being that commands over 10,000 goblins. Anyone who dares to disobey his orders won't even need him to take action personally. His subordinates will swarm them first. Also, he holds deep respect for the general. It's thanks to the general's leadership that they were able to grow from a tiny tribe to the size they are today. But respect is one thing. He still couldn't calm the rage in his heart. So, his gaze landed on your mother who was holding you, and unbridled greed soon filled his eyes. Such a beautiful elf. He couldn't resist the temptation at all. Seeing the goblin slowly approaching, the white-haired elf's body immediately started trembling uncontrollably. That snapped you back to your senses instantly. You looked over and saw yet another person coveting your mother, and the rage in your heart flared up again. When he saw the look on your face, the adult goblin laughed smugly. He glanced at the shaman behind him and saw that he didn't react at all, so he started slowly approaching your mother. Right at that moment, a stone grazed past his scalp. One of your hands had already broken free from the vines, though your whole body was still hanging from the vines. Seeing you dare act so arrogant even when you're trapped, the adult goblin flew into a rage. He lost his cool for a moment and swung his fist straight at you, but his fist missed the very next second. By then, you who had broken free of the vines were already standing beside him. The goblin swung his other hand, but you dodged it skillfully once again. At the same time, you grabbed his arm with both hands. Then you used all your strength and spun your whole body around. Then there was a sharp crack. In less than 3 moves, the adult goblin's arm was completely torn off by you. Overwhelmed by the excruciating pain, the adult goblin rolled around on the ground screaming. Another adult goblin standing nearby couldn't stand to watch this any longer, so he stepped forward and raised his stone axe. Just as he was about to bring it down, a solemn voice yelled, "Stop!" making him freeze mid-motion. It was the general's voice. Then a huge goblin, a whole head taller than an average adult human, with rippling muscles all over his body, clad in armor, and a long scar across his face, walked slowly inside, exuding immense authority. When they saw who it was, the several adult goblins immediately knelt down and started complaining about how brutal and ruthless you were, saying that you had just been born, yet had already killed dozens of your own kind, so you must not be allowed to live. But the general only glanced up at the 2 underlings and raised a hand to cut them off. He said that getting beaten this badly by a baby, and they still had the nerve to come complain. He then asked the goblin shaman to tell him exactly what had happened. After hearing the full story, the general's gaze landed on you, who were standing protectively in front of your mother. It was as if he saw something incredible. A flicker of shock flashed across his eyes. His expression changed completely in an instant, but he quickly hid it away. He then asked you calmly, "You're the one who killed all these baby goblins." The general's eyes were fixed intently on you, as if he was trying to figure something out about you. You just stayed standing guard in front of your mother and said nothing, because you could sense that the goblin in front of you was extremely powerful. So powerful that even if you were at your peak in your past life, you would have to handle him with extreme caution. Just then, the goblin shaman standing nearby stepped forward, saying that it's normal for a baby goblin to not be able to speak. They can't communicate normally until they reach the growth stage, but your extraordinary natural talent made them forget that you were still just a baby. The goblin general realized this suddenly after hearing the shaman's words, so he immediately said that they would wait until you could speak to make a decision. As soon as he said that, all the goblins present were stunned, their mouths hanging open. Was this still their ruthless, decisive general? For a baby goblin like this, no matter how strong he was, they should never let him live. But the general's sharp glare immediately made the 2 adult goblins dare not voice any objections, even if they had grievances. They weren't directed at the general. They were directed at you, but they had already made up their minds. Once you reached the growth stage, it wouldn't be too late to kill you then. You didn't care about their ill intentions at all, paying them no mind. You were instead thinking what your chances of success would be if you tried to kill the goblin general. But for no apparent reason, you suddenly felt a splitting headache, and your body went weak. Before you could even react, the goblin shaman asked the general what they should do with the baby goblin in front of them. The general looked at you and was silent for only a moment, before telling everyone that everything would proceed as normal. He then led a group of soldiers and headed out of the cave. It seemed like you sensed that the danger had passed, or maybe your body had reached its limit. You collapsed straight to the ground. After all, you had just been born and had fought such an intense battle without eating anything at all. No one could hold up under that kind of strain. As you faded in and out of consciousness, you felt a familiar, gentle warmth. So you followed your instincts and bit down. Your mother was holding you in her arms at that moment.
Tears welled up again in her eyes, which had long since gone dry from crying.
She mumbled softly, "Please don't die. Don't leave me alone again, stuck in this dark nest all by myself." Meanwhile, the goblin shaman who was following behind the general asked the general in confusion, faced with a freak that attacks his own kind right after being born, "Shouldn't we kill him?" As if afraid of angering the general, the goblin shaman added, "I'm not questioning your decision. I just don't think we need this kind of goblin in our tribe." After hearing the shaman's words, the general stopped walking, glanced back at him, and said calmly, "I saw something in that boy. The right qualification. The qualification to become king?" After hearing that, the goblin shaman was completely shocked. "Does that mean that boy was born with the king's seed?" It was something every goblin dreamed of, because only a being born with the king's seed has the right to become king. If other goblins found out about this, a bloody storm would sweep through this entire forest. Even other races, especially humans, would probably do everything in their power to kill that baby. After all, a race with a king, and a race without a king, are worlds apart in terms of power. The goblins have never had a king, which is why they have ended up in their current miserable state. Back in the old days, the Goblin Empire was such a glorious civilization. That's why we must never let the secret of this baby get out. Otherwise, it will bring fatal, exterminating disaster to our entire race. After hesitating for a moment, the goblin shaman asked again, "What about the female elf that gave birth to the boy? Logically speaking, since she is the king's birth mother, she deserves the highest respect from the entire tribe. But they are goblins. They have no concept of a birth mother at all, because in their eyes, females are nothing but tools for breeding offspring. The most important point is, there are no female goblins in their race at all. They can only reproduce with females of other races. This is also one of the reasons why the Goblin Empire fell. They offended too many races, so the moment people spot them, their first reaction is to eliminate them immediately. The general did not hesitate at all at this moment. He said coldly, as a king, "You naturally don't need such so-called creatures, but you seem to rely heavily on that elf and want to protect her. So we can't let her live any longer. A king cannot have weaknesses." But after the general pondered for a moment, he added that there was no rush for this matter. At least before you outgrow your infancy, you still need that elf to play the role of a good mother. The white-haired elf finally accepted your existence. She takes good care of everything for you. After that day, you were taken to a place. It was less of a house and more of a prison. Inside the metal cages, many elf maidens were imprisoned. Goblin soldiers were stationed on both sides of the corridor. After these elves were brought in, a curse was placed on them to prevent them from strangling goblin cubs. It also clouds their minds, so they will wholeheartedly raise the cubs. Goblins have a very short growth cycle. It only takes 3 months for them to outgrow their infancy and enter the growth stage. This is also the reason why the goblin race has been able to reproduce and spread so quickly across the continent. Time passed, and more than a month went by. You've grown a lot taller. In the days that followed, the white-haired elf kept taking care of you. She did almost everything a mother should do. As her child, you took it for granted and enjoyed her care. Although this body is very weak, its growth and recovery speed are beyond your imagination. There is even a mysterious power, transforming your body. Also, right in front of your eyes, something has been floating there all the time. It displays your attributes, along with your talents, skills, and other information. But you were so immersed in your mother's embrace that you didn't have time to figure out what it was. To please your mom, you started to babble in baby talk and awkwardly called out Mom. Your mom just wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes, then stroked you gently. But you could feel that, as time went by, Mom was getting more and more afraid of something. Just then, several goblins suddenly showed up. They wanted to take the woman in the opposite cage away. The woman seemed to know what being taken away by these goblins meant, so she curled up in the corner, her body trembling nonstop. kept repeating, "I don't want to go." But she had no say in the matter. The goblins walked into the cage and dragged her out right away. Right at this moment, Mom's body started shaking. Her eyes were filled with tears. So you poked your head out and asked her confusedly what was wrong. Every time something like this happened, Mom would hold you and cry. This was already the 10th time this month. The woman just now was the second last one here. You didn't know what that meant. You only knew that Mom seemed scared. A goblin nearby heard what you said and suddenly burst out laughing. Then he said, "Of course it's because your mom is about to become our toy." Then he showed a disgusting grin. Hearing this, Mom seemed to recall some bad memories. She suddenly let go of you, her eyes going blank and lifeless. It was as if she had lost all hope of living for the future. She hugged her knees with both hands, tears streaming down her face. But right at this moment, a small green hand awkwardly stroked her head. This calmed her almost out of control emotions. Down gradually, the goblin outside the iron gate looked at Mom's desperate face and looked very pleased with it. In the end, these goblins took the woman and left. No matter how you called out to her, Mom looked like she had lost her soul and didn't respond at all. This made your face darken instantly, watching the goblins leave. You memorized them in your mind. The goblin guard who was watching you nearby snapped at you mockingly. You only have a few more days to enjoy yourself. Hearing the goblin's words, Mom's shoulders trembled involuntarily a few times. The light in her eyes dimmed even more. You didn't say anything else, just held Mom's hand tightly. Night fell. Since most of the prisoners had been taken away, the guards here were much thinner than before. But this place is deep inside the lair. It's impossible for any slave to escape. At least before now. No one had ever managed to escape. In the dimly lit room, the white-haired elf had her eyes closed tight right now. There were still wet tear streaks at the corner of her eyes. Just then, you who were being held in her arms opened your eyes. You moved your body gently and slipped out of your mom's embrace. Then your whole body merged into the shadow and left this place. Ever since you recovered last time, you gained this strange ability. It's the skill called Shadow Sneak, but it has a lot of limitations. First, the teleport distance is very short. Second, it can only be used in the shadows. Most importantly, you can only teleport yourself away. You can't carry anything extra with you. To put it simply, you can't carry anything heavier than your own weight. That's why you can't take Mom away with you. Then you use Shadow Sneak to get out of the cage easily, seeing only a few scattered goblins around. You relied on the experience from your past life and quickly avoided their patrols. This little security force, to you, poses almost zero threat. Right now you only have one target, the goblin who insulted Mom this morning. It wasn't until you got out that you realized this was a huge underground lair. It was as complicated as an ant colony. If no one shows you the way, you can easily get lost inside. But none of this was a problem for you. In the dim corridor, two goblins were eating. You took a closer look and found they were eating human fingers. So while they were chatting, a figure suddenly appeared and landed right on the neck of one of the goblins. By the time he realized what was happening, his neck was twisted. In just an instant, you took care of him neatly. Then a world notification sounded in your mind. Congratulations, you have killed an adult goblin. Based on the effect of the predator skill, you have obtained the target's talent, self-recovery. You have gained 1 strength point. Almost at the same time, the other goblin reacted. He raised his broadsword and slashed at you fiercely. You swept your calf hard and immediately knocked him off balance. At the same time, your knee hit his neck precisely. Then with extremely fast movement, you crushed his throat. This prevented him from making any sound, and you quickly snatched the broadsword from his hand. Then a flash of light sliced through the goblin's head. Its head was severed right on the spot. Congratulations, you have slain an adult goblin. Based on the effect of the predator skill, you have acquired the target's innate ability, self-regeneration. You gained 1 strength point. Innate ability self-regeneration detected. Duplicate ability automatically merged into innate ability, self-healing. You ignored the notification sound entirely. You waved the broadsword in your hand. It felt pretty well balanced for you. So you fastened it to your waist, then you followed the scent and headed off again to find that specific goblin. Before long, with the help of your innate skills, after assassinating multiple patrolling goblins, you finally located your target. Right now, that Blinn was trying to assault a captured woman. The reason we say trying is that the woman had already woken up and was fighting back with all her might. This human female right now, Chris stared at the ferocious goblin. Huddled in the corner in terror, she cursed her terrible luck. For some reason she couldn't figure out. She couldn't muster any strength at all. But if she could just get her strength back, getting out of here would be a piece of cake. After all, her class among humans was rogue. Not just any rogue either, she was one of the best. She had max-level stealth skills. As for how she got captured by goblins, that was all the fault of her brainless teammates. They'd found some weird colorful fruits somewhere. They looked pretty and vibrant. No one expected they were actually sedatives. One bite and everyone went quiet instantly. The whole team passed out cold right there. When she came to, she was already in this place. Was she really going to spend the rest of her life trapped here? She would never let herself become a breeding tool for these ugly monsters. Watching the goblin slowly approaching her, Chris's face was filled with despair. At that moment, she prayed someone would come save her. She'd even agree to marry whoever saved her. No questions asked, just as the leering goblin was about to have his way with her. A flash of cold steel glinted through the air. The very next second, the goblin's head was separated from its neck, thudding to the ground with a wet squelch. As the world voice announced, it officially confirmed the goblin's death. Congratulations, you have slain an adult goblin. Based on the effect of the predator skill, you have acquired the target's innate ability, Strength Boost. You gained 1 strength point. That whole sequence of events left Chris completely stunned. She only snapped back to her senses now and looked over at you standing in the corner. With stealth skills this impressive, up until that very moment, she hadn't even noticed you were there at all. That was unbelievably impressive. And you were just a goblin cub, for crying out loud. Keep in mind her class as a human was a rogue with fully maxed out stealth skills. She was extremely adept at masking her presence and detecting others' auras. Even if she was out of sorts right now, there was no way she wouldn't have sensed you at all. What's more, this kind of technique, there was no way a newborn goblin could possibly master it. As for innate skills, even if you were born with them, so what? Without hours and hours of practice, you'd never be able to use them properly. But it only took her a split second to figure out what was going on. You must be a top-tier expert from the Adventurers Guild. After accepting the quest, you used a skill to disguise yourself as a goblin to infiltrate the nest, gathering intelligence inside. There's no other way to explain such masterful stealth skills. Being on a goblin cub, at that thought, Chris couldn't help but feel awed. To wipe out the goblins, you'd even disguised yourself as such an ugly, evil little cub. Such selfless dedication was truly admirable. In the blink of an eye, Chris was looking at you with complete respect in her eyes. That made you frown unconsciously. You'd planned to kill the goblin and leave immediately, but now this human had spotted you. You were just thinking that if she made any suspicious moves, you'd just kill her outright. When you noticed, she was staring at you with that weird look on her face. When you determined she posed no threat, you turned around to leave. But when Chris realized the expert was just going to leave her behind, a poor, helpless pretty girl like her, she called out to you without a second thought. When you heard her voice, you stopped in your tracks, then turned to look at her with a confused expression. Chris took the chance to ask, "Can you please help me get out of here?" But you acted as if you hadn't heard her at all, and just kept walking for Ward. Seeing how slowly you were moving, Chris grabbed your hand in a panic. At that exact same moment, a broadsword was pressed against her neck. Seeing this, Chris immediately raised both her hands, terrified the expert in front of her would cut her head off. As for you, when you saw the woman wasn't going to try anything else, you lowered the sword, then you pulled a dagger from her waist and turned to leave again. That left Chris completely dumbfounded. That was her family heirloom, her most prized possession, but Chris could only hold back her anger and mentally noted this goblin cub's face for later. Then she glanced around her surroundings. The most important thing right now was to get out of here first. Sure, she was a little weaker than usual right now, which was why the goblins had managed to catch her. But she was a top-tier rogue. If she didn't have any life-saving skills, she never would have risked her life taking this quest. Now that her strength was coming back, she'd head back first and report the situation to the guild. Then Chris's body slowly started turning transparent until it vanished entirely. That was her life-saving skill, invisibility. As for you, right now, you'd already snuck back using your shadow sneak skill. The broadsword you'd been carrying was too noticeable, so you stashed it under the bed, just to be prepared for any emergencies. Without a well-balanced weapon on hand, you could never fully relax, watching your elf mother who was still fast asleep. You sniffed at your own clothes, and once you confirmed there was no smell of blood on you, you turned into a shadow and curled up in your mother's arms, then fell into a deep sleep. Once you were still and asleep, the elf mother slowly opened her eyes. Her sapphire-like eyes reflected the image of a terrifying goblin cub. She wasn't under any spell. All she had to do was reach out a hand, and she could kill you easily, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. If she could have brought herself to do it, she would have killed you the night you were born, smothered you while you were still a newborn. After a long internal struggle, the elf mother also fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, you were woken up by the yelling of a group of goblins. You slowly opened your eyes. The first thing you saw was your mother's breathtakingly beautiful face. You were resting your head on her lap. In babbled, broken Elvish, you stammered out the word mom, but right after that, a tear rolled down her cheek. You reached out a small hand to gently brush her cheek, but you were interrupted by a harsh, shrill voice. You frowned, then turned to look where the voice came from. You saw 3 goblins standing outside the iron gate. They yelled directly at you, "Hey, you little brat! Did you kill another one of our kind last night?" You ignored them completely and glanced over at your mother first, getting ready to stand up and kill all these annoying goblins. But your mother gently held you down and said softly, "My baby, go back to sleep if you're tired." And outside that iron gate, one of them is a one-eyed goblin. He is the one you hit with a stone earlier and blinded one eye of
Seeing that you are ignoring him.
and instead lying on the elf's lap. He immediately fumed and snapped, "You damned little runt! How dare you ignore me? Do you think you can protect your mother like this?" Then the one-eyed goblin burst into loud laughter. Then he said with a ferocious look, "Your mother's fertile period is coming soon. By then she will become everyone's toy." Before he could finish his arrogant rant, a small stone suddenly grazed his cheek. Then, the one-eyed goblin caught the murderous look in your eyes. That made him furious right away. He immediately ordered his men to open the door. He was determined to kill this little brat today. But just at that moment, the goblin shaman walked over. Then he said in a deep voice, "This matter has been fully investigated. It was done by a human female, but she has already run away now. Instead of bullying a cub here, you'd better go catch that female for me." After hearing this, the one-eyed goblin could only grind his teeth in anger. If it weren't for the fact that this old guy is so close to the general, I would never be afraid of him. Watching the 3 goblins leave, the shaman could not help but sigh. This chosen heir is way too good at stirring up trouble. Who knows what kind of disaster he will cause in the future. Meanwhile, the 3 goblins who just left were also brimming with malicious schemes. One of them suddenly thought of something, then said excitedly to the one-eyed goblin, "In just a few more days, the white-haired elf will be sent to the breeding chamber. By then, given that cub's personality, he will definitely start a fight with all the goblins present. As soon as he breaks the rules set by the general, we can get rid of him directly." Hearing this, the one-eyed goblin's eyes lit up. He said he would definitely cripple you, little cub, then make you watch helplessly as the mother you are trying so hard to protect is violated by all of us in turn. Then the group walked towards the patrol room in high spirits. That night, your relationship with your mother grew even closer. You also learned for the first time that your mom's name is Victoria. At this moment, the elf mother was teaching you over and over again the elven language, maybe deep in her heart.
She also hoped that she could get out of here.
Then return to the elven kingdom and live there with you. Even though she knew all this was impossible, what if there was a chance, stuck in this dark, stinking den every day? If she didn't even have this tiny wish to hold on to, she really wouldn't know how to keep on living. Actually, you also know that your mother doesn't like this place at all. It's just that those green-skinned monsters outside don't seem willing to let your mother leave. But as long as I kill all of them, won't we be able to get out then? As for goblins, no matter how many there are, it doesn't matter. There will always be a day when I kill every last one of them. A few more days passed quickly. That day, your mother was nibbling on black bread as usual, while stroking your forehead, but the next second, you seemed to sense something, and immediately scrambled out of your mother's arms, getting ready for battle in an instant. Almost at the same time, the sound of footsteps came from outside. A group of goblins walked in through the door. You didn't need to think to know. They were here to take away the last remaining elf. The moment these goblins walked in, Victoria's body trembled. Fear washed over her like a tide. The leading one-eyed goblin licked his lips, then said, "Your good days are over, kid. Why don't you come along and watch how we have fun with your mother?" The one-eyed goblin's words immediately made the other goblins burst into laughter. They absolutely hated you, little cub, to the core. After all, the goblin cubs that died at your hands. Many of them were their children. Even though the goblin race doesn't value blood ties, that doesn't mean their children can be treated like piglets and slaughtered whenever they want. Listening to their filthy words, you were completely enraged at this moment. You could ignore all insults directed at you, but your mother was an absolute taboo. Just when you were about to make a move, Victoria grabbed you. So you turned your head and looked at your mother with a confused face. At this moment, Victoria forced a smile onto her face, which was stiff with fear. "Wait here for mommy, okay? I'll be back soon." After hearing Victoria's words, all the goblins laughed even louder. One of the older goblins even said disdainfully, "You can act so calm now, but later I'll make you kneel down and beg for mercy." Listening to these vulgar insults, you were so angry that you wanted to rush forward and kill all these monsters who insulted your mother. But the old goblin didn't care at all, and instead taunted, "We're acting under the general's orders right now. If you dare to stop us, don't blame us for ignoring our kinship." After saying that, the old goblin used his wooden staff to hit the ground hard. Then he continued in a serious tone, "Do you really think you alone can fight against so many of us goblins and the entire den?" Meanwhile, the one-eyed goblin standing nearby also taunted you gleefully. "Don't worry. I'll definitely take good care of your mother." Faced with all the provocation from everyone, you didn't make any move and just let them take Victoria away. Worried about you? Victoria looked back at you once, then let out a sigh of relief. At least this way, her child would be able to survive. During the 3 months they'd spent together, Victoria also knew that you were very close to her and very obedient. You basically did whatever she told you to. It wasn't even just closeness. It was more like dependence. But among the goblin race, there doesn't seem to be any concept of a mother. But when she thought about everything you'd done before, she couldn't treat you like an ordinary goblin either. Maybe you're a so-called mutant, who knows? It just so happened that it happened to her. Should she call it luck? Or is it heaven's blessing to her?
Did heaven send you to save her?
Victoria was obviously terrified, and she knew that as long as she said the word, her child would rush over to save her regardless of everything. But if that happened, the child would die. And the two of you would never be able to escape anyway, because in this den full of goblins, even a legendary S-rank adventurer probably wouldn't be able to make it out alive. Since that's the case, as long as her child can live on, she will be content. Just then, a goblin saw that Victoria was walking too slowly and couldn't help raising his hand to push her, just as his hand was about to touch her. Everyone saw that arm fly past Victoria's face, then fall straight to the ground. Then a shrill scream echoed through the entire cave. The goblin was clutching his arm, and because of the intense pain, his entire body curled up into a ball. But the next moment, a flash of blade light swept past, and a trail of blood appeared on the goblin's neck. At the same time, the voice of the world rang out in your mind. Congratulations, you have killed a goblin. Based on the effect of the predation skill, you have gained 1 strength point, but you ignored it. And holding a dagger, you said coldly to everyone present, "I won't allow you to take my mother away." Seeing this scene, the old goblin standing nearby flew into a rage. So he immediately raised his staff, channeled magic power into it, making it emit a faint glow. But just as his staff was about to fall back, a flash of blade glinted past in an instant. The hands holding the staff were severed immediately. The stunned old goblin didn't even have time to feel the pain. You had already appeared above him and snapped his neck straight away. Congratulations, you have killed the old goblin. Due to the effect of the predator skill, you have gained 1 magic point. You have acquired the opponent's skill. Fireball? The whole place fell silent at this moment. All the goblins stared at you blankly. No one expected that in just a split second, you had taken down 2 adult goblins, and one of them was a battle-hardened old goblin who could use magic. Then you slowly stood up and said in a cold tone, "No one can take anyone away from me." Seeing this, Mom The one-eyed goblin was about to get angry at first, but he suddenly realized something. He laughed loudly and said, "You violated the general's order. You killed your own kind. Do you think you can get out of here alive? Brothers, get him. Take down this arrogant little brat who doesn't know his place." After hearing the one-eyed goblin's order, the goblins behind him swarmed towards you. At this moment, in the one-eyed goblin's eyes, you were already a dead man. After all, you were alone. How could you fight off so many goblins? But the next second, his jaw dropped in shock. When the horde of goblins charged at you, you didn't advance but retreated instead, and vanished straight into the shadows. All the goblins were stunned at the sight. They started searching everywhere. But your physical stats were far better than these adult goblins, especially when it came to speed. They were no match for you at all. Right at this moment, everyone saw a flash of silver light, and a goblin's head rolled to the ground. Gradually, whenever your figure appeared, it meant the death of another enemy. This made the goblins, who were known for their cruelty, feel terrified of you too. All of them wanted to escape this place, but as they retreated, the Grim Reaper had already snuck up on them. Congratulations, you have killed a goblin. Due to the effect of the Predator skill, you have gained 1 strength point. Strength has reached the current tier's maximum limit, but you, who were busy taking down enemies, completely ignored the notification sound. In the dimly lit prison at this moment, a wave of fear was spreading among the goblins. After all, no one wanted to face an enemy they couldn't find and couldn't touch. In just a split second, the dozens of goblins present were all killed by you. Right after that, a surge of powerful energy rose from inside your body. You stepped on the corpses of the goblins and slowly closed your eyes, sensing the changes inside your body and the constant notifications from the world voice. Congratulations, you have killed a goblin. Due to the effect of your Predator skill, you have gained 1 speed point. You have gained 1 constitution point. Speed has reached the current tier's maximum limit. Constitution has reached the current tier's maximum limit. Congratulations, during your juvenile stage, at an incredibly fast speed, you have maxed out strength, constitution, and speed. You have obtained the special talent, Limit Break. After hearing that your stats had reached the cap, you slowly opened your eyes. You could indeed feel that a barrier was restricting your power, but you didn't think much of it. Instead, you turned your cold gaze towards the last remaining one-eyed goblin. The one-eyed goblin broke out in a cold sweat immediately when he saw this. How is this guy still a juvenile, but so powerful? That's absolutely impossible. But this terrifying aura, he had only felt this from the general before. Isn't he a low-rank goblin? Why does he have the aura that only superiors have? For a moment, the one-eyed goblin was almost scared out of his wits. His innate instinct seemed to be telling him that the juvenile in front of him was unbeatable. Seeing the situation, the one-eyed goblin immediately pushed Victoria towards you, mumbling, "Take her back. She's all yours." Victoria was even more bewildered at this moment. When did her child become this strong? Then you walked up to your mother and said slowly in Elvish, "Mom, wait a little longer. It'll be over soon." But Victoria tried to hold you back, because if you kept killing, there would be no place for you in the goblin nest anymore. If you couldn't stay here, then people outside would never accept her child even more. But your mother's action didn't stop you.
Because the only thought in your head right now
Was to kill all these goblins. Then you used Shadow Step and appeared right in front of the one-eyed goblin. Sensing your overwhelming aura, he immediately knelt on the ground in fear and started begging for mercy. He completely gave up the idea of fighting you, but his begging meant nothing to you. It was completely useless. But just as you were about to kill this goblin, a dark figure suddenly appeared and blocked your dagger. Judging from the force of the impact, his strength was far greater than yours, but you didn't hesitate at all. After the brief clash, you used the recoil to quickly pull back and create distance between you two. You didn't plan to fight him head-on. Instead, you tried to conceal your aura and hide in the darkness. But only a moment later, you were locked on by him. Sure enough, this trick wouldn't work. This trick works perfectly for those brainless goblins, but it's completely useless against the enemy in front of you. It has no effect at all, because once an assassin is spotted, it's very hard to hide again. That's why assassins are trained to kill with one strike, so you had to give up hiding. You tensed every muscle in your body. Then you looked at the person in front of you. You saw a goblin wearing armor and holding a silver greatsword. Staring at you coldly, he spoke first. "So it's you, kid. The goblin juvenile that's been making a lot of noise lately. Your strength is really impressive. Even when I was your age, I probably wouldn't have been able to beat you. In the entire nest, the only one who could match you at your age was the general when he was a kid. This man is none other than the high-tier goblin species, the Goblin Knight. When the one-eyed goblin saw who it was, he acted as if he had seen his savior. He rushed over and started crying and complaining, while accusing you of all the atrocities you committed. But before the one-eyed goblin could finish talking, the shadow behind him started to wriggle. Then you suddenly appeared and stabbed your dagger towards his neck. But a silver longsword suddenly blocked in the way. The two weapons clashed, making a clear ringing sound. "Do you want to kill someone right in front of me?" The Goblin Knight narrowed his eyes slightly. His tone was extremely hostile. "Even if the general has his eye on you, this is way too arrogant." So he gripped the sword in his hand tightly and swung it hard. The next second, you felt a terrifying force hit you. You were sent flying backwards and slammed into the wall behind you. Seeing this, Mom immediately rushed over to cast healing magic on you. But after you recover, when you try to step forward to attack again, Mom yanks you back before you can move. Then she says, her voice choked with tears, she begs you to stop fighting. After these months of living together, she has long seen you as family, and she recognized who the visitor was at a glance. He's the direct knight of General Goblin. His strength is way more than a cub can handle. Besides, killing a high-rank goblin is a very serious felony. She doesn't want you to be left with no place to stay in the den. Seeing Mom crying desperately, tears streaming down her face, your heart twitches involuntarily. Then you raise your blood-stained hands to wipe her tears away. Right at this moment, the Goblin Knight chuckles and says, "Right now you stand no chance of beating me at all. So while I'm still patient, step away from that elf right now. No matter what, she's going to the breeding house today to bear new lives for our race." Before he even finishes speaking, you're already behind him. You launch an attack immediately. Facing all your moves, the Goblin Knight counters them easily, and he gradually realizes your strength is slowly increasing compared to just now. Then something hits him. He says to you contemptuously, "If you don't defeat me soon, I'll kill your mom first." Hearing that, you snarl angrily, "I'll kill you first then." You don't say anything else after that. Instead, you unleash a relentless storm of deadly attacks, but he blocks every single one of them. What's more, he keeps insulting your mom, so you go berserk, increasing your attack speed nonstop, like a robot with no limits. Gradually, even the Goblin Knight can't help but marvel. This cub is really something, but no matter how talented you are, in front of high-rank goblins like us, you're nothing but an ant. This one-sided fight should end once and for all. So in just a few breaths, the Goblin Knight finds your weak spot. He grips his silver longsword and stabs straight for your heart. Luckily, you block it with your dagger in time, stopping that fatal blow, but the powerful recoil still sends you flying. But at the same time, a flash of blade light glints from your hand. But your target isn't the Goblin Knight. With a wet squelch, when he turns around to look, he sees the one-eyed goblin behind him has already been shot in the head by your dagger. Only then does the Goblin Knight realize your target never changed from the start. All the attacks you launched at him earlier were just to distract him, but this cub actually killed the one-eyed goblin right under his nose. If I take him back and train him properly, he'll definitely have a great future. But while he's lost in thought, a terrifying power surges out from your body. This makes the Goblin Knight standing nearby lose his composure instantly. Right now, a world voice keeps ringing in your head. Congratulations on killing a goblin. Based on the effect of the predation skill, you have gained 1 strength point. Strength has broken through the limit, starting to break through the juvenile stage restriction. Applying. Application failed. Application failed. Application failed. Application succeeded. Congratulations, you have evolved from juvenile stage to growth stage. Your stage cap has been increased. Based on your 3 attribute limit breakthrough, your attributes have been enhanced. Accompanied by a deafening boom, the entire space seems to be shaking. Around your body, streaks of lightning like spirit snakes crawl wildly all over your body. The dazzling white light is so bright that everyone can't open their eyes. Amid the lightning, a huge surge of magic power comes rushing in like a flood, completely engulfing your body. Soon, under the effect of this magic power, Your body undergoes incredible changes. Your originally short body seems to have been injected with new vitality now. Your body starts growing taller rapidly, at a speed visible to the naked eye. From less than a meter tall originally, it instantly grows to an amazing 1.4 meters. His body lines also become smoother. His green skin, under the glow of the lightning, looks even smoother and more delicate. His originally hunched back is now straight and strong, as if it can hold up the weight of the entire world. He stands straight on the ground, head held high, chest out, towering between heaven and earth. With extraordinary aura, his originally messy fangs have also returned to normal now, neatly arranged inside his mouth, looking extremely sharp. Yayan right now has undergone earth-shaking changes, but he is still a goblin at core. Those long green ears are the symbol of goblins. It's just that they don't look that scary anymore now. Instead, they add a bit of unique charm.
Chapter 16. The Vision of Breakthrough.
Everyone is shocked. He broke through all limits. What on earth is going on here? A goblin who rushed over nearby sees Yayan has broken through to the growth stage and is extremely shocked. His eyes are wide open. His face turns green with fear. Actually, breaking through to the growth stage is no big deal. Unlike the mature stage, as time passes, most species will grow from the juvenile stage to the growth stage. The mature stage is different. Not all goblins can reach the mature stage. Put simply, the mature stage is not a growth stage. It is a realm. The growth stage is different, though it is also a realm, but this realm is very minor. It's just easy to break through as you grow. So, reaching the growth stage is nothing to be surprised about. After all species can do it. But this commotion is way too big, isn't it? When we broke through the juvenile stage, there was no commotion at all, right? Way more than no commotion. I slept through mine, and broke through when I woke up. Not like him at all. And he's actually standing straight. That's what shocks them the most. After all, low-rank goblins usually hunch over. They can't straighten their backs. Usually the lower the rank of the goblin, the more they hunch over. But this goblin in front of us is standing straight with his chest out. That's exactly how high-rank goblins look. But before, other than his amazing combat power, he had no traits of a high-rank goblin at all. The other goblins are completely confused about Yayan. But the goblin knight nearby knows exactly what's going on. Looking at the goblin in front of him, the goblin knight narrows his eyes. Based on the information the general provided, and his own judgment, this goblin in front of him is definitely a low-rank goblin. But obviously, this is not the kind of breakthrough commotion a low-rank goblin should have. Even he didn't have such a grand scene. I'm afraid only the peak goblins like the general would have such a commotion when breaking through. Is this why the general found him interesting and sent me over? He really is weird. This goblin cub actually doesn't interrupt Yayan's breakthrough. He just watches with an expectant look on his face. Victoria, who is standing off to the side right now, covers her mouth with her hand, stares wide-eyed at the child who has changed so much in front of her, wondering in her heart if this is really her child. From his body, she actually spotted a faint trace of elven traits in him. No, that's impossible. But then again, even Victoria, who knew nothing about the goblin race, was well aware that Yayan's breakthrough right in front of her was absolutely extraordinary. Actually, when a race is in the breakthrough stage, which is also the growth period, there usually isn't too much commotion. Some creatures even get through it after a night of sleep, unless the individual is extremely gifted among their race, or far outperforms other members of the species when breaking through, though she did expect her child to be out of the ordinary, and knew there would be some commotion during the breakthrough. Normally, this kind of breakthrough would bring obvious racial evolution, but she never expected the commotion to be this massive. Mind you, this is just a barely completed breakthrough, from infancy to the growth stage. Even her older sister, known as the top genius of the Elven Kingdom, never caused such a huge commotion. Her child seems to be far too remarkable. Rumble. Right now, all the goblins inside the goblin nest were completely unaware that the sky outside had changed. Rumble! Deafening thunder rolled across the sky, like a furious giant beast growling low. It shook everyone to their core. Dark clouds gathered rapidly like spilled ink, dyeing the entire sky pitch black. It seemed to foreshadow that a major event was about to happen. The Goblin General, who had already come outside long ago, took a deep breath. As he raised his hand, a powerful aura burst out from his body, instantly suppressing all surrounding auras completely. Immediately, the originally raging dark clouds and thunder seemed to have lost their direction and began circling and struggling in the air. Gradually, they lost their original power and momentum, getting weaker and weaker. Finally, they dispersed on their own. In the blink of an eye, the sky became clear and sunny again. Sunlight spilled down onto the earth, as if nothing had ever happened. The Goblin Shaman Shah, standing beside the general, hesitated for a moment and said with such a huge commotion, "I'm afraid other races, especially the human kingdom nearby, and even the Adventurers Guild will notice. So what are you trying to say?" The general stared ahead not far away and said in a deep voice, "Should we relocate or tell the goblins below to lie low a bit?" The Goblin Shaman Shah paused for a moment, then continued. "Recently, too many people have gone missing, I heard. The Adventurers Guild has already taken action. Even that human called the Goblin Slayer heard the commotion too, and has arrived at the Adventurers Guild nearby." When he heard the name Goblin Slayer, the Goblin General's expression visibly changed. A flash of reminiscence crossed his eyes, but he quickly pushed those feelings down, hiding them deep inside, without letting any other goblin notice. I heard there's some small movement from the Elven Kingdom side too. A half-elf team led by a pure-blood elf is heading our way right now." The Goblin Shaman Shah was about to say something more, to persuade the general to keep a low profile before the king grows up. After all, too many races are keeping an eye on them. The reason they've been ignoring us and haven't taken action to exterminate our race is that our clan doesn't have subversive power. For those peerless powerhouses, or for the kings of other races, we are not a threat at all. But now that we have our own king, everything is different. So should we maybe... The Goblin General shook his head. "Cutting off the Goblin Shaman, keep killing, everything stays as usual." But the Goblin Shaman hesitated, wanting to say something more, but was scared back by the general's gaze. He could only nod helplessly. "Yes, let's go. Should we go take a look? How that little guy is growing." The Goblin General glanced at the distant town, then quickly walked back into the cave. The Goblin Shaman had no idea what the general was thinking. The members of a race are not all completely loyal to their king. That's true for humans. That's true for elves. And that's true for dragons as well, not to mention goblins, who are known as the embodiment of evil. Therefore, the members of a race are generally divided into 3 factions: the king's faction, the neutral faction, and the self-proclaimed king faction. If you say he belongs to the king's faction, he doesn't care about the king's safety at all, acts arrogantly and recklessly, and even drew the attention of the Adventurers Guild now. If you say he belongs to the self-proclaimed king faction, who wants to kill the king, take his place, and become the king himself. He has been protecting the king all along, never revealed the king's identity, and even paved the way for his growth. Sigh. The Goblin Shaman Shah let out a sigh, shook his head, and walked into the nest. "It seems I can't count on the general. I need to make preparations on my end too. Everything is for the king." Chapter 17, The Adventurers Guild's Extermination Team, the Northern Wind Empire. The Sub-Zero Territory among all human territories. Inside the Sub-Zero Territory under the rule of the Northern Wind Empire, the peaceful daily life was shattered by an unexpected incident. The originally bright blue sky suddenly turned dim, as if covered by a huge black curtain. The entire world was shrouded in a depressing atmosphere. People stopped what they were busy with and looked up one after another, staring at the sudden darkness. Their faces were filled with confusion and terror. It was as if they saw some kind of unknown horror in this darkness. Fear spread among the crowd. Some powerful human experts, or those wise men with extensive knowledge, had complex expressions on their faces. They knew that this sudden change in the sky was a manifestation of some special individual breaking through. This kind of manifestation could be some powerful demon beast, or some other unknown existence awakening. But judging by the scale of it, it doesn't look like a calamity-level demon beast no matter what. But they knew that this place probably won't be peaceful in the future. For an existence like this, the Empire will never let it run wild. They will definitely send a powerful army here to eliminate this threat. As for them, they'd better not meddle in things that don't concern them. Those with strength might as well take on a few more commissions. So if a war really breaks out later, they'll have enough money to run away. Right now, at the Adventurers Guild, whoa, looks like another calamity-level demon beast is about to appear. A woman named Fiona wearing a black mage hat looked at the sky outside and said in a relaxed tone, "I wonder how much gold we'll get. For this crusade mission this time." The muscular big guy Dita took a sip of wine and laughed heartily. "You two are really something. Even a newly broken through calamity-level demon beast has the power to massacre an entire city. You can't let your guard down easily, okay?" Amy next to them pouted and warned the two lazy people with a solemn face. Yeah, we got it. Dita and Fiona both nodded. But judging from the scale of this commotion, it's not like it's some super powerful calamity, right? Gosh, Brother Morris, come on, scold these two for me, Amy shouted at a man fully clad in armor beside her. However, Morris acted as if he didn't hear her at all, standing there alone in a daze. If you looked closely, you could see that Morris was trembling all over right now. His eyes under the helmet were wide open, his face full of disbelief. This could it be? No! That's impossible. Even in distant history, goblins. There has only ever been one goblin king of that level. But weren't existences like that already wiped out by all races long ago? How can there still be one alive? Morris, hello? He only came back to his senses when he heard someone calling him. Only then did he come to his senses. His team members were looking at him with worried faces right now. What's wrong with you? You've been absent-minded from the very start. No, Morris shook his head. It's nothing. With that, he turned to look at the sky that had returned to normal. Someone broke through the barrier. What kind of monster is making that breakthrough? Let's go, all right. Morris stood up. He offered no explanation. Our goal is to kill all the goblins. At Morris's words, no one objected. They all got to their feet one after another. Hi, we're here to take a quest. A teenager stood at the counter. He held the quest slip he'd taken from the quest board and handed it to the young lady at the Adventurers Guild reception. All right, please tell me your name and your adventurer badge. I'm Ike, a new adventurer. Our team is called Demon Hunting Squad. As Ike spoke, he took out a badge and handed it to the receptionist. Okay, I'm registering your information right now. The receptionist took the badge and logged the team and their accepted quest in the notebook. Oh right, there's an extra side quest here. Would you guys be interested? If you can't finish it, there's no penalty at all. But if you pull it off, there's a great reward. Reward? Ike. And Lisa, the girl behind him, looked confused. Yep, it was posted by someone outside. The guild, any adventurer can take it. The reward is 100 gold coins. Everyone's eyes went wide. 100 gold coins, you know? 1 gold coin is enough for a person to live on for a whole month. Ordinary people never even get to see a gold coin in their lives. That's right. Gulp. Lisa swallowed hard. Wait, the quest target is an elf. We'll take it. Xiaogang, the guy standing off to the side, nodded, without a hint of hesitation. Even if we fail anyway, there's no penalty, right? Oh, right, there's another one? The reward isn't as big, but you can take it on the side, too. No penalty if you fail either. At that moment, Ike was bored. And looking around aimlessly, he had no interest in quests that involved finding people or protecting people. The reason he became an adventurer was to go on real adventures, not do boring stuff like looking for people. Suddenly, he spotted something. His eyes lit up. He was overjoyed. Looking at the group of people about to leave the building, Ike called out to them without hesitation. Hey, hold on. Wait a second, you're Morris, right? Ike walked up excitedly, a huge grin on his face. The legendary Goblin Slayer. You've killed at least 10,000 goblins. You saved countless girls who were abused by goblins. That's so cool. I'm a huge fan of yours. The Goblin Slayer squad looked completely stunned. They were full of confusion. What the hell is a fan? What do you want? Morris frowned slightly. Oh, I heard the number of goblins around here suddenly increased. Ike was practically buzzing with excitement. I knew I'd definitely get to meet my idol here. So I came over. I can also take the goblin slaying quest while I'm at it. While I'm at it, Amy, who was standing nearby, seemed to sink into some kind of memory. So what's your point? Morris didn't have time to listen to this kid ramble on. He cut straight to the point. Let's team up. Ike looked at Morris, with clear expectation in his eyes. No, I won't team up with you. Morris rejected him outright. He then offered a piece of advice. Even if I told you not to go, you wouldn't listen, would you? So I'll give you a few warnings. Don't underestimate goblins. If you take this as casually as you seem to, you'll get hurt easily. Also, don't go... As Morris finished speaking, he didn't hesitate for a second and left directly with the Goblin Slayer squad. Oh, what's his problem? Thinks he's some big shot, huh? He's just killed a few goblins, that's all. Lisa pouted. She looked really annoyed. Right, totally. The other team members were also annoyed at the Goblin Slayer's attitude. What's there to be cocky about? Killing a bunch of low-level monsters. Oh, come on, don't say that. Seeing his proposal get rejected, Ike didn't seem too disappointed. He looked at his teammates firmly to comfort them. It's normal that they ignored us. They are the Goblin Slayer squad, after all. Putting everything else aside, every single one of them is super strong. But I believe once we get stronger, they won't look down on us anymore. All right, Ike suddenly yelled, full of energy. Let's try to kill as many goblins as we can. We can't let them look down on us. Mm-hmm. Lisa waved her little hand happily. Sure, they're just goblins, right? Looking at his teammates who all looked so relaxed, Ike felt a little worried. But when he thought about it, how strong could low-level goblins even be? He already had a strategy all planned out. As long as they didn't get bloodthirsty and follow the goblins back to their nest, only kill the ones that are alone or in small groups. There shouldn't be any big problems.
This'll work, we've got this.
Chapter 18, Breaking the Limit. Counterattacking the goblins. The general arrived at a spot in the Divine Charm Forest, deep inside the goblin nest. Yayan had just completed his transformation, feeling the abundant power coursing through his body. His fingers had changed from 3 to 4. The shape of his hands was also becoming more and more human-like. It wasn't just his hands. His entire body was growing more and more human. Was it because his mother was an elf? The main reason was the completely different power inside his body. It felt like he had reached an entirely new level. Yayan's status panel at this moment was as follows. Name, Yayan, race, low-level goblin. Special individual stage, growth phase. Strength, 35. Upper limit increased from 30 to 100. Speed, 35. Upper limit increased from 30 to 100. Constitution, 35. Upper limit increased from 30 to 100. Mana, 10. Upper limit increased from 30 to 100. Skills, Shadow Sneak. Fireball variant, exclusive skill, Predation. Talents, Aura Concealment. Language Mastery. Mana Affinity, Self-Healing, low tier. Strength Enhancement, low tier. Speed Enhancement, low tier. Mana Manipulation, low tier. Special Talent, King's Seed Limit. Breakthrough. The status panel clearly didn't change that much, but this power that felt nothing like his old strength, where did it come from? Could it be that the attribute numbers here aren't just added up simply, but stacked multiplicatively? Yayan didn't understand, but one thing he was sure of was that he was far stronger now than he had ever been before. Gulp! Seeing that Yayan had finished his breakthrough, the surrounding area fell completely silent. All you could hear was the sound of goblins swallowing nervously. So what? Just then, one of the low-level goblins spoke up, no one knew which, breaking the silence. So what if he outgrew the infant phase? You know, Lord Mu the Goblin Knight broke through the growth phase years ago, and he's about to break through to the mature phase any day now. Yeah, the low-level goblins heard this, and were instantly filled with confidence again. Kill him! They yelled from the sides. Get the Goblin Knight. To kill this goblin that's been slaughtering our own kind. Goblin Knight Mu. Kill this little brat. One goblin cheered, and the other goblins took up the cry. They all shouted for Yayan to be killed. No one likes a monster that slaughters its own kind. Even if that monster is a goblin too. After all, you never know when the other person will kill you out of the blue, so how do you avoid that? The answer is pretty simple. Kill them. It's the easiest solution there is. Kill the brat. Kill the brat. Hearing the other goblin's words, the Goblin Knight waved his hand to get them to stop. High-ranked goblins have a lot of authority over these low-ranked goblins. Soon those raucous, shouting voices died down. Not bad. This is definitely no ordinary low-ranked goblin. The Goblin Knight clapped his hands. Though he was utterly shocked inside, he forced a calm expression on his face. He couldn't embarrass the high-ranked goblins after all. He never expected that the little low-ranked goblin cub in front of him could pull off something like this. So what, though? Just like those low-ranked goblins said, the Goblin Knight, Moku, also thought that Yayan was no match for him at all. Even if he outgrew his cub phase and reached maturity, he still wouldn't stand a chance against him. He was a high-ranked goblin after all. Whoosh! Just as Goblin Knight Moku was lost in thought, a figure appeared out of nowhere like a ghost. So fast it was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Like a bolt of lightning cutting through the night sky, it was right in front of the Goblin Knight in an instant. What? The Goblin Knight's face drained of color. His pupils shrank suddenly. His eyes were filled with disbelief. But they were too close now. There was no way to dodge. He could only raise his hands in front of his chest helplessly, trying to block the incoming attack. Crack! Under the shocked gazes of all the surrounding goblins, the high-ranked Goblin Knight was sent flying like a sandbag hit by a sledgehammer, his whole body soaring backward. His iron armor scraped against the ground, throwing up sparks and making a sharp grating noise. How is this possible? The moment he was sent flying through the air, this question kept echoing in Goblin Knight Moku's mind. He couldn't believe that he, a high-ranked goblin, would be defeated so easily. This guy's strength and speed improved way too much. Bang! The Goblin Knight slammed hard into the cave wall. Rumble! As the Goblin Knight hit the ground, the entire cave shook once again. And by then, a figure had already quietly approached. It was Yayan. His gaze was icy, his movements agile, like a cheetah that has its eyes locked on its prey. He didn't hesitate for a second, and charged straight forward, ready to land a fatal blow on the high-ranked Goblin Knight. Right then, the world voice rang in his head. You have used Limit Break. Your strength and speed will be greatly increased by 50%. Taking advantage of the Goblin Knight letting his guard down, Yayan unleashed his full power, planning to kill the Goblin Knight instantly. After all, in Yayan's eyes, the Goblin Knight from just now was full of weaknesses from head to toe. For Yayan, who was born an assassin, he would never let such a good opportunity slip away. Almost the second the Goblin Knight slammed into the wall, Yayan's figure moved like a ghost and appeared right in front of him. Shing! The dagger sliced through the air with a sharp whistling sound, aiming straight for the Goblin Knight's neck. However, just as the dagger was about to hit its target, an invisible force suddenly appeared, stopping the dagger just a few centimeters away from the Goblin Knight's neck. Yayan felt a jolt in his hand, and the dagger couldn't move forward even a little bit. What's going on here? Yayan was startled, a flash of confusion crossing his eyes. Enough. Just then, a deep, authoritative voice rang out in the lair. Heavy footsteps accompanied the voice, as if every step shook the entire ground. Yayan looked up and saw a burly figure walking out from the depths of the lair. It was the Goblin General, the absolute strongest in this lair, Lord General. Seeing the Goblin General appear, those low-ranked goblins were overjoyed, as if they had seen their savior. They all swarmed forward, crying to the General about everything Yayan had done. Lord General, you're finally here? A low-ranked goblin shouted excitedly. You have no idea how many horrible things this evil cub has done. Yeah, another goblin chimed in. He killed so many of our people. He's a total monster. The low-ranked goblins babbled on, accusing Yayan, hoping the general would use his power to execute him. That's enough. The Goblin General waved his hand. Whoosh, almost at the same time, a small figure appeared from behind him. It was Yayan. After noticing a tiny flaw in the Goblin General's defense, He didn't hesitate for a second, and rushed forward to launch a sneak attack. Chapter 19, Assassinating the Goblin General. The blade glinted, the edge slashing straight toward the Goblin General's neck. But just as the blade was about to make contact with its target, an invisible force suddenly emerged, like an invisible barrier, blocking Yayan's attack. The blade hit the invisible force, making a clear clinking sound. Yayan felt a massive force hit him, and his whole body was sent flying backward. Yayan rolled a few times on the ground before stabilizing himself. He looked up at the Goblin General, his eyes full of confusion. According to his calculations, he stood a chance of killing him right now. But where did this gap in power come from? Could it be related to that voice in his head, and his ability to recover his strength quickly? Suddenly he remembered his skill that let him merge into shadows. This was a similar supernatural ability. That's so weird. Did he have this kind of power before? Oh? The general only glanced at Yayan casually and waved his hand lightly. Yayan was pushed back several meters before landing steadily on his feet. Yayan knew that perfect opportunity from just now would never come again. How dare you! By now, all the goblins had finally reacted. That weird cub had just tried to kill the Goblin General. Who does he think he is? Kill him! The goblins bared their teeth viciously and surrounded Yayan completely. But Yayan didn't show a single trace of fear. No matter how many small fries there are, they're still just small fries. They can't do anything to me. Just as the low-ranked goblins were about to attack Yayan, the general beside them spoke calmly. Stop! Then, under the shocked gazes of all the goblins, he ordered the goblin shaman Sadasa beside him. Take them away. Yes, the goblin shaman Sa nodded. Come with me. The goblin shaman walked a few steps and realized something was wrong. He looked back and saw that Yayan hadn't moved. He was standing guard, shielding his mother behind him. Don't worry, we won't hurt. Your mother. The goblin shaman looked back and glanced at Victoria casually, a flash of lust crossing his eyes. As long as you come with me, hearing the goblin shaman's words. Yayan didn't follow him. Let's go. Just then, Yayan suddenly felt warmth in his hand. It was his mother holding his hand. With her fair, slender fingers, Yayan looked back and saw Victoria smiling at him. Even though her hands and body were trembling in front of the Goblin General, she didn't cower behind Yayan. Instead, she stood beside him, facing the Goblin General's scrutiny together, using her small, thin body. Mom, we're in this together. He heard his mother's words. Yayan held back his killing intent. He nodded blankly. He gripped Victoria's hand, squeezing it a little tighter. The goblin shaman just glanced at them casually and said nothing. Follow me, then. The goblin shaman Shah led Yayan and Victoria to the second floor, which was actually the second basement level. By the way, the place they were currently in was the 5th basement level. Yayan was very reluctant. He even wanted to run away and kill all these goblins, but Victoria stopped him in time. If Yayan kept making trouble, they probably wouldn't get anything out of this. Even Yayan's child would get injured, or even die. Victoria knew this was the best possible outcome right now. It was even so good it felt unreal. Though Yayan had shown extremely high talent, the threat he posed was also growing more and more dangerous. A goblin that doesn't follow orders, no matter how strong its strength or potential is just a ticking time bomb. Obviously, in the eyes of these goblins, Yayan was exactly that kind of existence. This made Victoria start to doubt the Goblin General's intentions. He was being far too nice to Yayan. It was abnormal. General, why did you let that guy go? The low-rank goblins around had always held deep respect for this mighty general, but right now they were full of confusion and dissatisfaction with the general's decision. After all, that guy was the murderer who killed their own kind. How could you let him off so easily? Yeah, General, a voice rang out from the crowd of goblins, sounding rather indignant. This kind of menace should be eliminated as soon as possible, so we don't leave any future trouble. The goblin knight Mu, who was standing nearby, stared fixedly at the general. He saw the general nod slightly, as if he understood something. Then he stepped forward, facing those goblin warriors who were questioning the general, and roared angrily, "How dare you? How dare you question the general's orders?" This angry roar sounded like thunder exploding in everyone's ears. The low-rank goblins were stunned immediately. Looking at Night Moo in confusion, they couldn't understand why he had suddenly become so harsh. One low-rank goblin was just about to say something when a sharp blade flash suddenly sliced through the air. Blood splattered everywhere. The goblin's head fell from its body, hitting the ground hard, making a dull thud. Ah! This scene shocked all the goblins present. They looked at each other, all stepping back at once. The air was filled with a strong smell of blood, making everyone feel a chill run down their spine. "General!" one goblin cried out in horror. His eyes fell on the general standing behind Night Moo. He was just about to call out, but the moment he opened his mouth, a flash of sword light cut through the air. Another scream rang out. That goblin also fell into a pool of blood. The Goblin Knight did not show any mercy because of the low-rank goblin's wails and pleas for their lives. The blade in his hand glinted coldly in the moonlight. He raised it high. His cold gaze swept over those quivering, trembling low-rank goblins. "How dare you blame the general?" His voice was deep and harsh, as if it came from the depths of hell. Swoosh! A flash of sword light. Another goblin fell to the ground with the sound. Blood stained the ground red. "What, Sir Knight? What's wrong with you?" The D-rank goblins screamed in terror. They couldn't understand why the knight would suddenly attack them so viciously. They wanted to resist, but the gap in their strength left them completely unable to fight back. Before they even had time to pick up their swords, the Goblin Knight's blade had already swung down again, taking their lives. The low-rank goblins could only pin their hopes on that lofty general, hoping he would step forward to stop all this. But the general just stood aside coldly, watching everything unfold. "How dare you look directly at the general?" The Goblin Knight roared again, swinging his sword once more. "How dare you not look at the general?" The general let out another angry roar. Another goblin fell into a pool of blood. Wails filled the room one after another. The Goblin Knight swung his sword faster and faster, each strike taking a life. "No, don't kill me. Damn you, you maniac." Chapter 20. Massacre to silence witnesses. Join the patrol team. I'll fight you to the death. But these acts of resistance and angry roars in front of the Goblin Knight were all completely futile. He was like a cold, ruthless killing machine, constantly swinging the sword in his hand, harvesting lives, until there was not a single standing low-rank goblin left in the room. The Goblin Knight finally stopped moving. He planted his blood-stained greatsword into the ground, bowed to the general and said, "General, all have been eliminated." The Goblin General nodded slowly, no expression on his face, as if everything was under his control. He looked away from the corpses, and his gaze fell on the Goblin Knight. At that moment, the Goblin Knight felt an invisible pressure, making him sweat uncontrollably. He knew that the general's gaze carried endless majesty and power, so he didn't dare to slack off or be disrespectful in the slightest. "Are all the witnesses here?" the general asked calmly. "Yes, General," the Goblin Knight replied respectfully. "All of them are here." "Are you sure none escaped?" the general confirmed again. None escaped," the Goblin Knight replied firmly. The Goblin General nodded slowly, looking away from the corpses again, his gaze landing on the Goblin Knight once more, making the Goblin Knight sweat profusely. "Do you need your subordinate to kill himself?" For a moment, sensing the killing intent coming from the Goblin General, the Goblin Knight did not show any fear or intention to resist. Instead, he asked thoughtfully, hearing the Goblin Knight's words, the Goblin General gave the knight an extra glance and said calmly, "You don't ask why. Your subordinate only follows orders and never asks for reasons. Is that so?" The Goblin General laughed when he heard this. "What do only follow orders and never ask for reasons? Then bury everything that happened today deep in your heart." "Yes, General," the Goblin Knight nodded, breathing a sigh of relief in his heart. He knew his answer was correct. It's not that he wasn't afraid of death, but if the general wanted him dead, he would have absolutely no way to survive. The Goblin General was that powerful of a being. Even just standing here, He could feel the absolute suppression from their shared bloodline. The general might not even need to lift a finger. This was the power of an absolute superior species. Knowing he had no hope of winning, the Goblin Knight decided to take a gamble instead. As for why he didn't ask about that special existence, the Goblin Knight Mu didn't want to die so early. He wanted to live. That was all. After all, he hadn't had enough of delicious food and nice things yet. Besides, even if he didn't ask, from the general's attitude and the unexpected breakthrough he had witnessed, the Goblin Knight Mu could roughly guess what was going on. This was also why the general wanted to silence the witnesses, one of the key reasons anyway. I really didn't expect it. That legend actually turned out to be true. Sigh, but it's none of his business anyway. Not all goblins care about these things. Make sure to have lots of fun when we get back. Yayan and Victoria arrived in front of an unremarkable-looking cave. The cave was small, but it exuded a peculiar sense of warmth and tranquility. Inside the cave, there were some simple yet practical pieces of furniture, a rough stone table and stone stools, along with several soft animal hide cushions. In a corner of the cave, a pile of fresh fruits gave off an enticing aroma. It was so mouth-watering. "You two will live here from now on." The goblin shaman's voice broke the silence. There was a hint of unquestionable majesty in his words. But surprisingly, he spoke with great respect for Yayan. Oh right, one more thing. As if he suddenly thought of something, the goblin shaman looked at Yayan and said, "You don't have a name yet, do you?" Yayan spoke calmly. From the goblin in front of him, Yayan didn't sense any killing intent, so he had nothing to hide. It's just a name after all. However, his casual answer left the goblins and elves present speechless. After hearing Yayan's name, the goblin shaman looked surprised. He glanced at Yayan faintly, then shifted his gaze to Victoria. Victoria, the moment she heard Yayan call her name, her eyes dimmed a little. Seeing this, the goblin shaman didn't say anything more. From now on, you are out of the infant stage. You will have to go out and contribute to the nest later. The goblin shaman rambled on, only to find that Yayan wasn't listening at all. Instead, he was holding Victoria's hand. Looking around aimlessly, the goblin shaman couldn't help but feel a headache at the sight. He knew Yayan didn't understand anything yet, and needed time to adjust to life here. But he also knew that the rules and disciplines in the nest couldn't be broken easily. Just when the goblin shaman had no idea what to do, he suddenly had a brainwave. An idea popped into his head. If you go out to patrol and hunt outside, you can bring lots of nice things back for your mom, you know? The goblin shaman used the tone of someone tricking a little kid. As he spoke to Yayan, he hoped this temptation would spark Yayan's interest in the outside world and make him more proactive in participating in the nest activities. After all, he is the future king. How can he know nothing about the nest? Watching the shaman in front of him talk to Yayan in that kid-tricking tone, Victoria standing nearby was stunned. Who would fall for this trick? Your little kid trick, is that true? But Yayan, who had shown no interest at all just now, asked seriously. The eyes that used to be indifferent to everything seemed to be glowing faintly. The moment the goblin shaman saw Yayan's expression, he knew it had worked. Of course it's true, right? As he spoke, the goblin shaman looked at Victoria. Yayan looked at her too. Of course, Victoria nodded. She knew perfectly well that the goblin shaman was using her to make Yayan behave. But what else could she do even if she didn't want that? In this nest, goblins with no value to use might get disposed of. So to keep Yayan from getting killed, this was the only way. No, maybe she just didn't want to die herself. After all, if Yayan died, she would die too. She was really selfish, wasn't she? Victoria laughed at herself mockingly. She nodded. Hearing that he could go out and find things his mom liked, Yayan nodded without hesitation. Okay, I can join. Seeing Yayan agree, the goblin shaman next to him let out a sigh of relief. This would at least shut those other goblins up. But the shaman didn't know what the general was really planning, covering for him like this. Was he afraid that the other goblins wouldn't notice how special Yayan was? Then join the patrol team tomorrow, the goblin shaman said after a moment of hesitation. That should be okay, right? He glanced at the little future king, Then the goblin shaman left. Chapter 21. Mom Will Teach You. The night grew thicker gradually, falling slowly like a huge piece of black silk. It wrapped the entire world in a veil of mysterious silence. Moonlight seeped through the cracks in the window, pouring into the room like flowing water. It spread over every inch of the space. Dappled light and shadow danced on the walls, adding a touch of mysterious color to this peaceful night. Victoria sat by the bed, her face looking extra gentle under the moonlight. She looked down at Yayan lying on her lap, her eyes full of tenderness and fondness. Yayan's small body was curled up, like a well-behaved little kitten. Feeling the warmth from his mom, his eyes peeked through the small gap between his mother's chest. Looking at the world curiously, "Yayan," Victoria murmured softly. Her voice sounded like it came from the distant horizon, ethereal and clear. Yayan looked up at his mother, his eyes shining with confusion. "Is Mom calling me?" At this moment, Yayan's voice after evolution was crisp and childish, like the sound of nature. People couldn't help but want to protect her. Victoria nodded with a smile. She reached out and gently stroked Yayan's newly grown white hair. The hair was soft and smooth, like fine silk. Her movements were gentle and warm, making Yayan feel extremely secure and comfortable. "Do you like your current name?" Victoria asked softly. There was a hint of hesitation in her voice. Hearing his mom's words, Yayan immediately broke into a bright smile. His eyes curved into crescent moons, revealing 2 cute little fangs. "I love it," she answered without hesitation. "As long as the name is given by Mom, I like it all." Hearing Yayan's words, looking at Yayan's innocent smile, a flash of hesitation crossed Victoria's eyes. "What's wrong, Mom?" Seeing his mother standing there stunned and motionless, Yayan was a little worried and pushed his mother's soft body lightly. Victoria came back to her senses. She shook her head slowly and said with a smile, "Nothing. Mommy is just thinking, little Yan, if I give you a real name, will you like it?" Yayan's eyes lit up immediately. She answered excitedly, "Of course I will. The name Mom picks must be the best." Though Yayan didn't know what a real name meant, or what use having 2 names was, in his mind, as long as it was given by Mom, it was all fine. Or really? Victoria smiled like she never had before, looking just like an angel. "Then Mommy will think about it carefully." Take your time, Mom. No rush, be good." Victoria gradually got used to her current life, got used to having Yayan by her side. "Mom will teach you Elvish, okay?" The sky had just turned light at dawn. Morning light seeped through the cracks of the goblin nest, casting dappled spots inside a dim room. The room was filled with all kinds of weapons. Some were tattered and broken, some were covered in rust. Each one seemed to hold an unknown story. "Pick any weapon you like and can handle well from here." The old goblin stood in front of the pile of weapons, shouting to the group of goblins gathered around. Hearing this, all the goblins swarmed forward, wanting to pick a weapon that suited them. One of them had just outgrown infancy. A young goblin stared fixedly at the enormous axe, his eyes sparkling with longing. He stepped forward, eager to give it a shot, hoping to lift the axe, only to find he couldn't lift it at all. With no other choice, he had to settle for the second best, next to the huge axe. He chose the small axe. Ha ha ha, seeing this scene, a rather rough-looking goblin couldn't help bursting into laughter. He strode forward and lifted the huge axe with one hand, earning repeated praise from the surrounding goblins. Creak, creak. Yayan looked around at these weapons and couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Though there were many types of weapons, their overall quality was poor. All had obvious cracks and breakages, and had not been maintained at all, as if they were just picked up randomly. Way worse than Black Cleaver, the dagger he picked up earlier. But it was still usable, since it was pitch black all over. It was especially suitable for assassination. That's why Yayan named this dagger Black Cleaver. Besides, Yayan found that Black Cleaver was extremely sharp and durable, so he liked it very much. His taste was as good as ever. Yayan glanced at the weapons nearby. Without hesitation, he picked several lightweight weapons. He strapped a few small knives to his thighs and hung several daggers around his waist. He originally wanted to take a bow and arrows, but gave up after thinking for a moment. All the bows here were of too poor quality, covered in signs of damage, and severely lacked maintenance. They might break after being drawn a few times. They were less damaging than the throwing knives he used. Yayan didn't take any more weapons after that. Oversized weapons, for people like Yayan who are good at assassination, are nothing but a burden. They will hinder his movements. Surprisingly, there were even guns here. Yayan walked over and picked up a pistol from the floor in a dark corner. Click in just an instant. Yayan disassembled the pistol easily. He found the craftsmanship of the gun was not exquisite, and even rather primitive. There were 3 bullets left in it. These goblins didn't seem to know the importance of bullets. There were only a few bullets among a pile of pistols. They were pretty useless, especially in a world like this. Yayan could feel that in a head-on fight. As long as you can see the muzzle clearly, and the timing of the finger pulling the trigger, it's not too difficult to dodge ordinary pistol bullets. That is to say, ordinary firearms pose no threat. To people with certain strength, of course, if there was a sniper rifle, that would be a different story. Unfortunately, after looking around, he didn't find any such weapon, even if there was one. The goblins must have thrown it somewhere. They didn't seem to know the value of these firearms. Even pistols were thrown aside randomly. Have you made your choice? As a reminder, the old goblin warned Yayan seriously. Those humans outside are very cunning. You can take more weapons. Indeed, other goblins all carry big swords or axes, but he only held a dagger in one hand and left the other hand empty. Enough, Yayan didn't explain. There was no need to explain to them anyway. Yes, for him, it was really enough. Just then, a sarcastic voice of a goblin came from beside him. Anyway, for a goblin like him, he's just going to get himself killed. They were the goblins patrolling with him. Their green faces were full of disdain for Yayan. If he takes too many weapons and dies, we have to bring the weapons back for him. Ain't that right, guys? Mang the goblin shouted at the goblins behind him. Yeah, the goblins behind echoed. Ha ha ha! Chapter 22, Goblin Slayer Squad enters the forest. The goblins mocked Yayan unscrupulously. In fact, everyone who knew Yayan's strength had been killed, so no one here knew how strong Yayan was. They only knew he killed a young goblin cub. But how much fighting power does a cub have? Killing a cub doesn't mean he can kill us. Besides, this is the lair. This kid is no longer that ignorant cub. If he dares to kill a goblin in the lair, he'd better be ready to get killed. When the goblins saw that Yayan didn't retort, they became even more arrogant. One of them even wanted to step forward to teach Yayan a lesson. Just as he was about to enter Yayan's killing range, the old goblin next to him stepped forward and stopped him. Enough! Have you forgotten the general's order? While speaking, the old goblin glanced at Mang the goblin from time to time. No infighting with Yayan. Mang the goblin looked very dissatisfied. The corners of his mouth lifted, staring at Yayan mockingly. I'm afraid some goblin doesn't see us as his kind at all. Wait till we get outside. You'll suffer a lot out there. How dare you hurt my brother's eye? Mang the goblin walked past Yayan and threatened coldly. But his threat had no effect on Yayan at all. All right, be careful on the way. The old goblin sighed. If it wasn't for his old bones just now, these cubs that just left their infancy would have been dead. At the outskirts of the Shenyun forest, Sieg, why do we have to be babysitters for those people? Fiona said lazily. She glared complainingly at the man walking ahead of her, who was fully covered in armor. Those newbies have their own adventures. Instead of worrying about them, we might as well finish more quests. All right, Amy, the priestess beside her, smiled and comforted Fiona. We were just like them once, too. If Morris didn't have this meddling personality, we wouldn't be here today, right? Then why didn't we stop them directly, when we were at the Adventurers Guild? Xiao Gang, who was walking behind, scratched his head, looking silly and confused. I think that kid named Ike is even a big fan of our boss. That's because we know all newbies who just joined the Adventurers Guild instinctively look down on goblins. This kind of low-level monster, rarely did Fiona put away her lazy smile and laughed at herself. How could people like them listen to others? They are arrogant and think they have everything under control. that they are geniuses. But usually the more talented and arrogant people are, the more easily they... Fiona. Looking at the downhearted Fiona beside her, Amy didn't know how to comfort her for a moment. Suddenly, Amy seemed to see something. She couldn't help waving her arm, and shouted to a group of people not far away, "Ellie, over here!" Ellie looked in the direction of the voice, and spotted Amy not far away at a glance. She walked over quickly, with a slightly reproachful smile on her face. "Oh, come on, sister. You're hunting goblins again." Amy smiled and patted her brother's shoulder. "Don't underestimate goblins, okay? Though they are small in size, their attack power and speed are nothing to scoff at." "Ha ha ha!" Ellie was amused by his sister's words and laughed loudly, and didn't take her words seriously at all. Everyone knows goblins are the lowest level monsters on the entire continent. Basically, even a newbie can kill goblins easily. What's so great about goblins? Just then, Kido, a burly man, walked over. They're just low-level monsters, nothing more. As soon as Kido finished speaking, his gaze fell on Morris again. He looked Morris up and down. Then he mocked that they were both silver-ranked adventurers. "You've actually been hunting goblins this whole time. You're such an embarrassment to all of us silver adventurers." Facing Kido's mockery, Morris didn't show any anger or dissatisfaction at all. He just glanced at the big man calmly. Then he said calmly, "We still have a mission. We'll leave first." With that, he turned around and left the scene with Amy. "Bye, little brother. Be careful, okay?" "Okay, sis." I seriously have no idea what these people are so worried about. Lido, the young mage girl standing nearby, wore a face full of disdain. Kido laughed loudly a few times. He waved his hand. "Let's go. We'll also go kill a few goblins to practice." "Haha, don't run. You ugly goblins." Today is your doomsday. Inside the outer perimeter of the forest, a burst of wild laughter echoed among the dense trees. It felt as if it could set the entire forest ablaze. Crunch, crunch. Dead branches underfoot snapped as they were stepped on. The sound was hurried and tense. A group of adventurers clad in leather armor and holding weapons were hotly pursuing a few panicking goblins. These goblins were short in stature. Their green skin, under the glow of the moonlight, looked especially ferocious. They waved their arms and legs wildly, letting out piercing screams from their mouths. They fled forward with all their might. These low-level monsters are so annoying. Kido swung the large blade in his hand, slashing fiercely at a goblin that was running slightly slower. However, the goblin seemed to have eyes on the back of its head. It rolled nimbly, dodging the big man's attack. "Damn it!" Kido's eyes widened. He roared with a face full of fury. He gripped the hilt of the blade tightly, as if he wanted to cut the entire goblin tribe down under his blade. "Chase them! We must eliminate all of them!" Kido waved the long sword in his hand, leading his team members to continue chasing. However, Ellie, standing nearby, remembered what her sister had said, and looked a little hesitant. "Captain Kido, goblins are cunning by nature. We should be more careful." "Why are you such a coward?" Kido glared at Ellie displeasedly, thinking of what he had said to Morris earlier. His anger grew even stronger. "They're just a few low-level goblins, nothing more. What's there to worry about?" The team members exchanged a glance. Though they felt a little helpless in their hearts, they didn't say anything more. "What do we do?" The priest gripped the staff in his hand. "What's there to be afraid of? They're just a few goblins. What's there to hesitate about?" The mage standing nearby looked totally casual. "We're a silver-ranked adventurer team, after all." "That's true. For experienced adventurers like them, low-level monsters like goblins are nothing at all. As long as we deal with them carefully, there's no way anything will go wrong. They are not those inexperienced rookie adventurers anymore. They are very proficient at killing goblins. They've barely made any mistakes before. After all, low-level monsters like goblins can be seen everywhere on the continent. They are the lowest level of beginner monsters. Basically, as long as you're a new adventurer, you can never avoid fighting goblins. After all, goblins are spread all over the entire continent. Just like cockroaches, if you want to not encounter them in the wild, that's basically impossible. Besides, they've rarely heard of any team being attacked and defeated by goblins. Chapter 23, Insult. Slaughtering goblins. In a patch of dense grass, a green army was hidden. Pairs of long ears in the grass twitched slightly. They glowed with a faint green luster. Under the cover of the green leaves, they blended into the entire natural environment, so green that they were dazzling. So green that they seemed to glow. Ha ha ha, look at these stupid humans. A short figure in the grass picked up a pair of binoculars. A pair of cunning eyes peered through the lenses, staring closely at the humans not far away. That was a goblin, a cunning and warmongering race. His face was full of mockery and ridicule, as if he could already see the dawn of victory. Remember later, kill all the males. Keep the females. Kill them after we're done enjoying ourselves. Okay, ha ha ha. A group of goblins hadn't even started fighting yet, and they were already dividing up the spoils of war. Okay, the other goblins around echoed one after another. Their faces also showed expressions of greed and excitement. Ha ha ha! Oh, right. Goblin Mang turned to look at Yayan, who had been silent behind him this whole time. He suddenly remembered what his good brother, Goblin Hay, had told him. After we go back this time, let's go have fun with an elf. What do you say? Elves are great. As soon as they heard the word elf, the goblins had lewd smiles on their faces. No matter which race you are from, female elves are considered absolute beauties in their eyes. Even before the Elf King was born, the elf race was treated as a commodity and traded by all races. Because of their appearance that is highly in line with the aesthetic standards of all races, female elves usually sell for extremely high prices. You can imagine how great the appeal of elves is to these low-level goblins. But in the breeding room of our nest right now, where are there any elves? All the goblins scratched their heads, looking at Goblin Mang, with confused faces. There are none in the breeding room. That doesn't mean there are none in other places. Am I right? Goblin Mang said as he looked at Yayan. Do you have an elf in your quarters? Why not invite the brothers to enjoy her? Don't worry, we definitely won't break her. Ah, really? For a moment, all the goblins cast looks of envy, jealousy, and greed at Yayan. Heh. Goblin Mang had a proud look on his face. So what are you going to do now? If you get angry and rush over, that's exactly what he planned. If he dares to make a move out here, then he has 10,000 reasons to kill him. Even with the elf as an excuse, he can also unite with the goblins around him to kill this arrogant kid together, then enjoy that beautiful elf. Gulp. It seemed that someone could no longer hold back the desire in their heart. He licked his dry lips, letting out a low growl in his throat. Hey, Goblin Yan! You mother... Before he could finish his words, a sharp glint of a knife suddenly cut through the air. Yayan's figure flashed. The small knife in his hand sliced through like lightning. That goblin didn't even have time to scream, and fell to the ground immediately. Blood splattered everywhere. What? The surrounding goblins all cried out in surprise. They looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. Goblin Yin. What the hell are you doing? Goblin Mang stood aside, but he was overjoyed in his heart. He immediately stepped forward. Putting on a solemn and righteous look, he pointed at Yayan and accused loudly. Killing a companion is a serious crime. How could you do such a thing? Yayan glanced at him coldly, a mocking smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He looked around. His gaze rested on the goblins who harbored ill will towards his mother, lingering on each of them for a moment. I'll send you down to look for other elves. His voice was cold and firm, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. How dare you! Goblin Mang roared angrily. He thought he was standing on the moral high ground, that he could take this opportunity to put Yayan to death. But he never expected Yayan to be so arrogant. He doesn't take us seriously at all. Do you really think the general is protecting you? That we wouldn't dare kill you? We're out in the open now, not your little safe nest. Before he finished speaking, Yogan moved instantly. He charged towards him as a blurred shadow. The goblin only had time to let out a shriek. Then he felt a sharp pain in his chest. A sharp dagger had already plunged into his heart. Who else wants to try? A fanatical glint flashed in Goblin Mang's eyes. A smug smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. He was ecstatic inside. Kill him for me! At this command, the surrounding goblins responded immediately. Fierce light shone in their eyes. They were armed with swords, axes, and other weapons. They pounced fiercely at Yayan. Yayan had long been used to this kind of scene. He moved with great agility. He could nimbly dodge every attack from the goblins and strike back quickly at the same time. Just as the goblins' swords and blades were about to strike him, he flashed aside and vanished right on the spot. The goblins were stunned immediately. They looked around everywhere, trying to find where Yayan was. "What? There he is!" The goblins cried out in alarm. Their hearts were filled with panic and unease. But while they were still searching for Yayan, a sharp pain suddenly came from their backs. They turned around in shock, only to see Yayan already standing behind them. The sword in his hand had already plunged deep into their bodies. The goblins fell down one after another. Their lives drained away rapidly at Yayan's hands, and in Yayan's ears, the world notification kept ringing non-stop. "Congratulations, you have killed a goblin! Based on the effect of your skill predation, you have gained 1 point of strength. Congratulations, you have killed a goblin. Based on the effect of your skill predation, you have gained 1 point of speed. Congratulations, you have killed a goblin. Based on the effect of your skill predation, you have gained 1 point of constitution. Congratulations, you have killed a goblin. Based on the effect of your skill predation, you have gained 1 point of strength." "No, stop!" A shrill cry echoed through the dim forest, followed by waves of creepy wails. The goblins fell one by one. Blood dyed the surrounding ground red. But even amid this massacre, they still failed to spot the figure that terrified them so much. Goblin Mang, who was standing not far from Yayan, watched his companions fall one by one. His heart was filled with panic and despair. He started to wonder, is this really the goblin we are familiar with? Why is the gap between us so huge? We are all low-level goblins, obviously. Why is this guy able to slaughter us so easily? I was wrong. Goblin Mang finally couldn't bear the pressure in his heart. He knelt on the ground. He apologized in a low voice to Yayan, whose location he had no idea of. His voice was full of fear and pleading. He waited for a long time, but got no response from Yayan. Goblin Mang thought Yayan had decided to let him go. He was overjoyed. Thinking he had escaped the disaster, he smiled secretly, planning in his mind that after he went back, he would report everything to the general and let the general execute this despicable goblin. However, just as Goblin Mang was secretly feeling proud, a flash of sword light suddenly passed by. He only had time to catch a glimpse of a dazzling bright light. The next second, his ferocious and lewd expression was forever frozen on his green face. There was a dull thud. Goblin Mang's body was split in half. Blood splattered everywhere. His eyes were still wide open, as if he couldn't believe that he would die so easily. But the reality is cruel. He had closed his eyes forever. A notification tone rang out. "Congratulations, you have killed a goblin! Based on the effect of your skill predation, you have gained 1 point of strength. Congratulations, you have killed a goblin! Based on the effect of your skill predation, you have obtained the Goblin's talent, Speed Boost D. Your talent, Speed Boost D. Duplicate detected. Initiating merge. Merge completed. Your talent, Speed Boost D, has been upgraded to Speed Boost C. Tap, tap, tap. Not long after he killed that goblin, there were continuous footsteps coming. It's those adventurers. Chapter 24. The new adventurer team's desperate situation. Inside the forest cave, an adventurer team of 2 men and 2 women received the goblin hunting quest and came here. I'm a genius who graduated from the Northern Sage Academy. The magician Linlin, you can rest assured with me around. The young magician patted her chest lightly. Her voice was full of unquestionable confidence. But the priest Lisa, standing beside her, looked a little worried. She held the staff that was much taller than she was, frowning tightly. But I still think we should be more careful. Ike, who was holding a greatsword, stepped forward in big strides. A burning glint flashed in his eyes. He smiled high-spiritedly. What's there to be afraid of? It's just a few goblins. Xiaogang also nodded aside. We aim to slay dragons after all. These goblins are just a piece of cake. Just then, someone shouted, "Look!" Goblins, everyone's gaze immediately focused on those ugly creatures. Not far away, Lisa was just about to cast a blessing spell. Ike had already charged forward with his sword. He snorted heavily, and slashed straight at the goblin. Pfft, blood gushed out. The goblin's head rolled to the ground instantly. Ike turned his head back. His face was filled with a victorious smile. Ha ha ha, how was it? I told you, right. They're just trash. A harsh creaking sound suddenly rang out in the quiet forest. Ike was just feeling smug about successfully taking down a goblin. Just now, when a gust of fishy wind suddenly came from behind him. He turned around abruptly, only to see a ferocious goblin with a cunning glint in its eyes, pouncing at him viciously. Squat down! A clear female voice cut through the air. Ike's heart skipped a beat. Without any hesitation, he squatted down quickly. Goddess of fire and war, please hear the prayer of your apostle. Show a fragment of your miracle at this moment. Fireball spell. The incantation from the woman's mouth was like the sound of nature, echoing in the air. As she finished the incantation, a huge fireball condensed into shape instantly. It streaked across the sky like a meteor, and accurately hit the goblin that was launching a surprise attack. Boom! The moment the fireball exploded, the powerful impact swallowed the goblin instantly. In just a split second, that ferocious monster was turned into ashes and disappeared into the air. Hey, don't cast spells near your teammates. Ike stood up from the ground and looked at the woman with some dissatisfaction. The woman just snorted disdainfully and ignored his complaint. Didn't I warn you already? Just at this moment, danger came again. A goblin approached Lisa silently. A cruel glint flashed in its eyes. The dagger in its hand was already raised high. Watch out! Xiaogang spotted this danger in time. He roared and swung the huge axe in his hand fiercely. It struck straight at the goblin's head. There was a dull thud. The goblin's head was split open by the axe. Blood splattered everywhere. Thank you so much. Lisa lifted her head. Her eyes were filled with gratitude. But before she could finish speaking, an arrow came flying out of nowhere. It whizzed past her eyes, heading straight for Xiaogang. Pfft! The arrow hit Xiaogang's left arm perfectly. Blood immediately dyed his arm red. Xiaogang let out a shrill scream of pain. His face twisted in agony. Lisa covered her mouth with a gasp. Her face went deathly pale. Wait, hold on. I'll heal you right away. Lisa quickly raised her magic staff, gathering her magic power, getting ready to heal Xiaogang's wounds. Damn it! Ike roared through gritted teeth. His eyes blazed as he locked onto the sneaky goblin that was trying to grab another arrow from behind its back. Like hell, I'll let you get away with that. Ike let out a furious roar. Like an enraged lion, he charged straight at the cunning goblin. But just as Ike was about to reach the goblin, a huge net suddenly sprung up from the ground, trapping him tightly mid-air. The sudden turn of events made Ike's face drain of color. He struggled to break free from the restraints, but the net only tightened further. It felt like it was squeezing the air out of his lungs. But what the hell is going on? He struggled with all his might, but it was no use. Whoosh! Another arrow cut through the air. It struck Ike's hand hard. Agony shot through his body. Ike's hand immediately lost its grip. The longsword slipped out of his grasp and clattered to the ground. Ike groaned in pain. Cold sweat beaded all over his face. Damn it, hold on. The young mage girl standing nearby saw the critical situation unfold. Without hesitation, she focused all her energy on gathering magic, getting ready to cast a spell to help Ike. But just as she started chanting the incantation, whoosh, a hand silently snuck up on her from behind and clamped over her mouth. The young mage was terrified out of her wits. Her eyes went wide, filled with terror and unease. She tried to struggle. She tried to scream, but the hand was pressed so tight over her mouth that she couldn't make a single sound. The young mage was filled with utter fear and helplessness. Tears started streaming down her face unbidden. Shing! A sharp dagger suddenly plunged through her stomach. Blood immediately soaked through her robes. The young mage let out a faint groan of pain and collapsed to the ground. In the dim cave, the faint firelight flickered, illuminating the girl's face. The young mage's clothes, the fabric that had once protected her, and complemented her delicate beauty were ripped open violently, revealing her jade-white skin now stained with bright red blood. "Screech! Screech!" The goblins' cheers were like sharp claws, tearing through the quiet air. Their grotesque faces looked even more terrifying in the firelight. Their victory had made them drop their guard. Driven by instinct, they began their cruel acts of reproduction. Silent tears rolled down the young mage's cheeks. Unspeakable pain racked her lower body. But she was completely powerless to stop what was happening. She could only stare frozen at the scene before her, letting her former companion see her humiliation and helplessness. "Help me," she let out a faint cry for help. Her voice was trembling and weak. Kill me," she screamed in her mind. But no one answered. Ike, trapped in the net nearby, saw everything that happened. His heart was filled with rage and grief. "You damn animals. I'll kill you all." He roared at the top of his lungs. He bit through the net, trapping him with his teeth. He grabbed the long sword from the ground and got ready to pounce on the vile goblins. But just as he was about to make his move, even more goblins swarmed out from the corners. "I'll kill all of you," Ike roared furiously, but his voice was quickly drowned out by the surging horde of goblins. Chapter 25, Goblin Slayer. Rescue and extermination of the goblins. How can there be so many goblins? Lisa stared at the scene before her, face full of despair, watching her companion being violated by the goblins. Watching Ike trapped and immobilized by the horde of goblins. Her legs went weak. She could barely stay standing. The goblins noticed her presence. They made ugly screeching noises and charged towards her. Was she going to become a breeding tool for these hideous monsters too? Her heart was filled with terror and despair. Whoosh! A flash of cold light cut through the air. It was the sword in a burly man's hand. "Run!" he shouted at the top of his lungs. His voice was filled with urgent resolve. The man's bravery did give her a tiny glimmer of comfort, but he was no god after all. He couldn't fight off all the goblins alone. Lisa hesitated. If she chose to run away, he would probably lose his life. At the hands of these monsters, go! At least one of us has to get out alive. Lisa glanced back at the young mage, whose legs were shaking uncontrollably, her whole body covered in fluids. Without hesitation, she chose to run. "I ran away," she whispered to herself. Her heart was filled with guilt and self-reproach, abandoning her companions and running away alone. Was that even the right thing to do? The goblins chasing her quickly caught up and pinned her to the ground. Maybe this was her punishment. She closed her eyes, waiting for her fate to befall her. They ripped her clothes open in one go, revealing her soft, fair skin underneath. But goblins are creatures that have no mercy for anyone. They only act on their base instincts. One of them reached out its rough green claw and grabbed at her soft chest. Lisa's terrified scream cut through the quiet of the forest. She tried to break free, but the goblin's rough, strong hands had already pinned her thin wrists firmly in place. She struggled with all her might, but it was like an ant trying to move a giant tree. She couldn't move an inch. Lisa's heart was filled with utter despair and terror. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the goblin's hideous, twisted face. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. She was still a virgin. Her body was a gift from the gods. Was she really going to be defiled by this disgusting monster? Just then, a cool female voice rang out beside her ear. "O gods who wield the sacred fire, please grant me the power to eliminate all the filth that plagues this world." As soon as the flame swordsman finished speaking, a blazing flame cut through the darkness, speeding straight towards the goblin. The flaming strike hit the goblin hard. The goblin let out a scream of pain. It was sent flying by the force of the flame arrow and slammed hard into the wall. Immediately after, a figure in armor dashed over like lightning. It was Morris. He held a long sword in his hand and thrust it mercilessly into the goblin's chest. The goblin let out a shrill, agonized scream and then went completely still, dead. Morris turned to look at Lisa. He asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Amy also hurried over right away and draped a piece of clothing over Lisa's shoulders. Lisa's body was still trembling slightly. Lisa choked out, My friend is still inside. Those goblins are very cunning. Don't worry, leave everything to us. Amy comforted her. She glanced at the goblins still wandering around. A cold glint flashed in her eyes. Dealing with these beasts. We're pros when it comes to goblins. Oh no. Amy suddenly smacked her forehead. Did I swear again? She stuck out her tongue. She said somewhat sheepishly, but I'm sure the gods will forgive me. Lisa looked at Amy. She's also named Lisa, just like me. Even her mannerisms are the same. But for some reason, something just feels off. Ha ha ha! Die! All of you die! Fiona roared crazily. Her voice echoed across the empty battlefield, filled with endless killing intent. She was draped in a black robe. Her face was twisted with savagery. Cold light flickered in her eyes, like a merciless grim reaper descending upon the mortal world. As she chanted, magic circles began to appear around her one by one. They glowed with different colored lights. Mysterious runes danced in the air. These magic circles emitted powerful energy ripples, making the entire battlefield shake. Right after that, all sorts of dazzling magic began to bombard the area. Fireballs, ice arrows, lightning, you name it. They cut through the air, leaving blinding trails behind them, before slamming hard into the horde of goblins. Under the bombardment of the magic, the goblins were blown to bloody pulp one after another. Screams of pain rang out everywhere. Crunch, crunch. As the mage kept chanting, the light from the magic circles grew brighter and brighter, as if it was going to devour the entire battlefield. In no time, most of the goblins were wiped out. Only a few scattered remnants were left, clinging to life. But these fleeing goblins didn't escape their fate of death. Morris held a long sword in his hand. He moved as fast as the wind. He dashed quickly towards the fleeing goblins. He cut them down one by one with a single strike each. His movements were swift and fierce yet precise. Every strike of his sword pierced the goblins' vital points with perfect accuracy, leaving them no chance to fight back. What followed was a bloody massacre. Fiona and Morris worked together, cutting down every last remaining goblin. The entire battlefield was dyed blood red. They were covered in blood, but their eyes were filled with coldness and resolve, as if all of this was completely natural. After the massacre ended, the battlefield fell completely silent. Only the sound of wind and distant howls of wild beasts broke the brief peace. Thud, thud, thud. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Dita tapped lightly on the rough wall with his fingers. At one moment, his fingers felt something unusual. Ah, found it, he whispered under his breath. He then struck the wall hard. Stones from the wall fell off one after another, revealing a dark hole, the entrance to a cave. The cave was filled with the smell of dampness and rot, as if something was watching them from the darkness. Dita leaned closer to the cave entrance. He saw a few goblin pups huddled inside. They were trembling all over. Their eyes were filled with terror and helplessness. Lisa watched this scene unfold. A strange sense of pity rose in her heart. She turned to Fiona beside her. She asked hesitantly, "Do we really have to kill them? They're still so little." Amy glanced coldly at the pups. The disgust in her eyes was plain to see. "So what? Goblins are an evil race. They're inherently aggressive and destructive," Morris added. "If we don't kill them now, they'll grow up and multiply into a whole tribe before we know it. And then we'll be in real trouble." Chapter 26, Strange. Goblin meets human adventurers gets killed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, when Keto's team finally caught up to their target, the scene before them left them, rooted to the spot instantly. It was as if an invisible force had pinned them in place. Up ahead, they saw a thin figure, a strange-looking creature, standing on top of a pile of goblin corpses, though his face somewhat resembled a human's. His long green ears clearly indicated his goblin identity. Those ears glowed with an eerie light in the sun, announcing his race to the whole world. The members of Keto's team stared in shock at this goblin standing on a pile of goblin corpses. An indescribable sense of fear and unease rose in their hearts. "What happened here?" Ellie asked in a trembling voice. Her eyes were filled with confusion and terror. "Whatever happened here, something's wrong. Captain, something's off about that goblin. Should we—" The priestess hesitated as she spoke, but before she could finish her sentence, Keto cut her off. "What are you scared of? No matter what, it's just a goblin, nothing more. Kido glared at the priestess. He then turned his gaze to the goblin corpses. A greedy expression appeared on his face. Look, those goblin corpses still have their long green ears, which means these are all worth money. He licked his lips, as if he could already see the shiny gold coins, waving at him. As Kido spoke, he didn't hesitate at all, and charged straight at Yayan. When the other team members saw this, they exchanged glances with each other. They could all see the helplessness in each other's eyes. But the captain already gave the order. What could they do? Besides, they also thought it was just a goblin anyway. There was no need to be so cautious. If something did go wrong, they could just run away. It's not like the thing could one-shot them, right? No way. Even a higher-ranked race couldn't one-shot them. Don't forget, they were silver-rank adventurers. They had hunted countless goblins, and even participated in the subjugation of disaster-level monsters. How could they lose to a weak little goblin like this one? With that thought in mind, the three of them followed their captain and charged forward. Faced with this lowest-tier, disgusting monster, Kido saw no need to hold back. He swung his weapon with full force right off the bat. You disgusting monster! Today is the day you die. Kido's rough voice echoed through the quiet forest, shaking the surrounding leaves and making them rustle down. His face was twisted with savagery. Raging fury burned in his eyes. The broadsword clutched in his hand glinted with cold light, as if it could cut through any obstacle. Whoosh! The broadsword was swung fiercely, slicing towards the strange goblin. A sharp blade light cut through the sky, carrying unmatched, terrifying power. It howled towards the goblin. The surrounding grass and trees in the face of this force seemed so fragile. They were all cut clean in half and fell to the ground. However, the moment the blade light was about to hit the goblin, something incredible happened. The goblin seemed to be enveloped by dark power. His entire body quickly turned as black as ink and merged into the shadows of the forest. The moment Kido's blade light touched him, it was as if it had cut through thin air. It passed right through without any resistance. After the skill Shadow Sneak is successfully activated, the user turns into a pitch-black shadow and merges into other shadows. During this process, all physical attacks are nullified. Kido was shocked. A low-level goblin actually has a skill. Skills represent the peak of memory and talent. Right at this moment, that goblin had reappeared behind Kido. He was holding a sharp pitch-black dagger in his hand and silently aimed it at Kido's neck. Kido felt a bone-chilling coldness. His heart clenched violently. What? Kido tried to turn around and dodge, but it was already too... The dagger was already pressing against his skin. Just a little more force, and it would slit his throat open. Despair flooded Kido's heart. Was he really going to die? At the hands of such a low-level goblin? Right at this moment, two voices suddenly sounded behind him. Holy shield, fireball! Kido was overjoyed. A faint light barrier suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking the dagger's strike. Right after that, a blazing fireball flew out from behind Kido and hurtled straight toward the goblin. Weird. A cold glint flashed across the goblin's eyes. He quickly stepped on Kido's back and used that momentum to leap into the air. The fireball swept past under his feet and hit the ground, exploding into a sea of flames. The goblin rolled in midair and landed steadily on the ground far away, quickly putting distance between himself and Kido and the others. As soon as he steadied himself, his entire body turned as dark as ink again, and then merged into the surrounding shadows. Kido and the others saw a flash of darkness before their eyes, and the goblin was gone without a trace. Thank you. Kido thanked his teammates. If it weren't for them, he would have died just now. Everyone stay alert. Kido stopped being overconfident and stood at the very front of the team as the meat shield. This goblin is a special variant. It can actually use skills. It's not like they've never seen goblins that can use skills before, but very few can use skills as proficiently as this one. In fact, extremely few. After all, goblins are low-level monsters by nature. They are cunning, sure, but they don't have high intelligence. That's common knowledge. But clearly, the goblin in front of them is an exception. Kido's brows suddenly furrowed tightly. He scanned his surroundings vigilantly. That oddly behaving goblin from earlier, had disappeared without them noticing at all. This filled him with a strange sense of unease. Some unknown danger was quietly approaching. "Did any of you see it?" Kido asked in a deep voice. There was a hint of tension in his voice. "Where on earth is that weird goblin?" The teammates also started looking around one after another, trying to find the missing goblin. But no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't find any trace of the goblin. Could one of them have already left? Ellie scratched her head, trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. But there was a hint of uncertainty in her tone. "Be careful, it might still be around. I'll use detection magic right now to check." The young mage girl gripped her staff tightly, nervous. She was about to cast detection magic to locate the weird goblin. But just as she was about to cast the spell, a dark shadow suddenly appeared behind her. The shadow was moving extremely fast, almost too fast for anyone to react. Right after that, a crescent-shaped slash came crashing down and struck the young mage hard. The young mage's expression froze at that moment. Chapter 27. All right. Goblins don't show themselves to humans. I once met a man who spared a baby goblin. And in less than a few years, that baby goblin grew up.
Do you know what happened next?
Morris looked at Lisa. What? Lisa swallowed hard. She asked nervously. It brought a horde of goblins and massacred the entire village that had let it go. With that, Morris drew the sword at his waist. Without the slightest hesitation, he slashed at the baby goblin trying to escape. Shing squelch. Blood splattered everywhere. The baby goblin's screams echoed through the cave. Lisa closed her eyes, unable to bear the sight. But Morris continued swinging his sword expressionlessly, until the last baby goblin fell into a pool of blood. After cleaning up the scene, Morris turned to explain to Lisa, goblins are a type of creature whose reproduction and growth are both extremely fast, almost 10 times faster than humans, which means give them a year and a half, and they can reproduce again. If you leave any of them alive, they will come back in no time. That's why when you encounter goblins, the best way is to root them out completely and leave no future troubles. Hearing Morris's words, Lisa fell silent for a moment. She seemed to still be grieving for those innocent lives. But in this world, aren't there any kind goblins? Hearing Lisa's question, Morris paused for a moment. Maybe he thought of something. Or maybe he thought of a certain goblin. Surprisingly, Morris didn't refute her. He nodded and said, maybe there are. But if a goblin is truly kind, it shouldn't show itself to humans. The only good goblins are the ones that never show up in front of humans. Die, goblin! Ha ha ha. As soon as Morris finished speaking, the explosion magic Fiona was chanting was like a meteor about to explode, carrying destructive power. Right after that came another loud boom. Flames spread out instantly, lighting up the entire cave. The raging flames were like a ferocious beast, devouring everything around it madly. Rocks were blown to pieces. Dust and gravel flew in the firelight. The cave walls were shaking on the verge of collapse from the explosion. Fiona, are you crazy? Dita yelled loudly. His face was full of horror and anger. If the cave collapses, we'll all die here. However, Fiona acted as if she didn't hear their shouts. Her face was twisted with rage, with a crazy glint in her eyes. Ha ha ha! All of you die, she roared, as if she wanted to pour all her anger and hatred out completely. Morris looked at the crazed Fiona and sighed helplessly. They all knew there was a deep thorn in Fiona's heart. It was the hatred and pain she could never let go of. Let's go, Dita said. He didn't want to stay in this collapsing cave any longer, or we won't even know how we die. But when he was about to leave, he found the other three still standing in place. What's wrong? Dita turned to look at the three. He asked confusedly. He's still breathing. We can still save him, Amy said, pointing at Ike, who was lying on the ground. Really? Hearing Amy's words, a glint of joy flashed in Lisa's eyes. Yeah, we can still save him. Amy nodded. There was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Great. Lisa wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. At least, she wasn't alone facing this crazy world. We weren't all wiped out. That's really great. Where's Morris? Wait. Morris's voice was calm and firm. He slowly walked to a tattered wooden box nearby. The box was covered in traces of time. Morris lowered his head slightly, and his gaze fell inside the box, on the shivering baby goblin. The baby goblin huddled in the corner of the box, its small eyes staring at Morris in terror. Its body was trembling non-stop. Morris looked at him. A cold sneer curled at the corner of his mouth. He murmured, "I did a way better job hiding than you back then." There was a note of mockery and smugness in his words. One can't help but speculate about Morris's past, and whether he had gone through similar circumstances before. However, now he was no longer that weak, insignificant being. Instead, he had become a powerful man who could control his own destiny. A sharp creaking sound broke the silence. The goblin cub turned to Morris and let out a pleading whimper. His voice was filled with boundless fear and despair. It was as if he was begging Morris to spare his life. But Morris was completely unmoved. He stared coldly at the goblin cub. There was not a trace of pity or sympathy in his eyes. He slowly drew the knife at his waist. The blade glinted coldly in the sunlight. "Try for a better life in your next reincarnation," Morris said flatly. His voice carried a hint of coldness and resolve. A flash of the blade sliced through the air. The goblin cub's wail cut off abruptly. His body was split clean in two. Blood sprayed everywhere. Morris had killed him without the slightest hesitation. It was as if he had just taken care of a trivial, meaningless matter. "Let's go." Morris sheathed his knife. He turned around and left. Lisa glanced around and trotted after him. No one knew how much time passed. The figures of the extermination squad disappeared into the depths of the dense forest. Soon, a dead silence fell over the area. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The blood on the ground had not yet dried. Suddenly, a figure quietly appeared at the entrance of the cave. It was a goblin, carrying a bamboo basket full of fruit on its back. Its face was brimming with contentment and joy. Obviously, it had just returned from a very successful foraging trip. But the moment it stepped into the cave, the sight before it made it freeze on the spot. The strong stench of blood hit its nose. The inside of the cave was a complete mess. All of its kin lay on the ground, covered in blood. It was a gruesome, unbearable sight. Squeak, squeak. The goblin cub, panicked, stumbled back and forth among the corpses of the other goblins. Squeak, squeak. Squeak. Its eyes were instantly filled with rage and grief. Its shoulders trembled slightly. It looked as if it was bearing an unspeakable pain. Squeak, squeak. It let out a furious roar. Its voice was filled with endless pain and rage. Just then, the voice of the world echoed in the goblin's mind. "Special individual detected. Potential of this individual has been unlocked. Awaken special talent. Evolution." At this moment, a strange power surged out from within its body. Under the effect of this power, its body began to undergo subtle changes. Its muscles grew stronger and firmer. Its gaze turned sharper and keener. Its body kept evolving. From an ordinary goblin, it gradually transformed into a far more powerful and far more ferocious high-grade goblin. Chapter 28. Assassination, the Furious and Desperate Adventurer Squad. In fact, they had overlooked a few things. There are only two outcomes for people captured by goblins: death or a complete mental breakdown. That is why they have never heard about how dangerous goblins really are. Of course, there is another scenario, and that is concealment. That's right. Those who survive being captured by goblins are usually women. A very small number of them do not suffer a mental breakdown, but the days they spent in the hands of goblins become an indelible nightmare for the rest of their lives. No matter how high a status they achieve later, this shadow will always hang over their heads. And women in this situation almost always end up holding very high status. Naturally, they would never tell anyone else about such a humiliating experience. That is why, even now, many adventurers still do not understand how dangerous goblins are. They are fooled by the goblins' weak apparent strength. Of course, conditions vary from place to place. The gap in goblin strength is also a major confounding factor. For example, if they encountered a high-ranking goblin species, they would never underestimate goblins again. As for general-level goblins, they are a total nightmare for adventurers. Snap. The bracelet on the young mage's wrist broke. The stone beads scattered all over the ground, clinking as they fell. What's wrong? Ellie seemed to sense something was off. She turned around and was instantly stunned. The young mage's body was completely frozen in place. Her face was filled with shock and terror. "You, Ellie?" was just about to put her hand on the young mage's shoulder. But before she could finish her sentence, a column of blood shot high into the air. Immediately after, a head fell from above and hit the ground. It was the young mage's head. The expression on her face was frozen forever. It was filled with disbelief and despair. One of the stone beads rolled right in front of the young mage's head. Thud. The headless upper body swayed a few times, before finally collapsing weakly to the ground. Blood gushed out from her neck, staining the surrounding earth red. Ellie's eyes went wide. Her face turned as pale as paper in an instant. Her features twisted in horror. It was as if she had seen the most unimaginably horrifying scene in the world. Her outstretched hand trembled uncontrollably. It looked as if she wanted to grab something, but there was nothing there to hold. She had grown up, never having experienced such a bloody scene before. Everything in front of her felt like a nightmare. She could not believe it was real. What's going on? The other teammates nearby also noticed something wrong behind them. They all turned around to look. When their eyes fell on that tragic scene, all of their eyes went wide. Rage surged up in their hearts. How could this happen? They could not believe it. In just a split second, a vibrant living person had just vanished. How? The cleric clamped a hand over her mouth. Her gaze fell on the stone beads scattered on the ground. She recalled the scene before they entered the forest. My little sister gave this to me. It's pretty, right? The young mage had worn an angelic smile as she showed off the stone bracelet on her wrist. When we get back from this trip, I'm definitely buying a cake for my little brother. But she would never get to go back. Really? I'm so jealous. The young cleric had puffed out her cheeks and said grumpily, "My little brother never prepares anything. Or his older sister. Isn't that annoying?" The young cleric had waved her little fist. "When I get back, I'm gonna give him a good scolding." Damn goblins. Keto let out a furious roar. Magic power burst out from his body instantly, forming a powerful whirlwind that sent the surrounding leaves flying everywhere. Seeing this, the cleric hurried forward to calm him down. "Captain, calm down." But Keto had already been blinded by rage. A barrier formed by his magic pushed the cleric away. With no other choice, the cleric could only raise her staff, trying to cast a holy light shield to protect Keto. But just as she was about to swing her staff, death arrived silently. A dark figure suddenly appeared behind the cleric. Immediately after came a sharp, swift slash. The slash cut through the air, letting out a sharp whistling sound. It formed a perfect arc, heading straight for the cleric to take her life. The cleric had no time to react at all. She could only watch helplessly as the dark figure drew closer. When she felt a cold chill wash over her, it was already too late. A flash of blade glinted past for a split second. The young priestess thought to herself, she was going to break her promise. She couldn't go back. She couldn't go back to tease her little brother anymore. She was so sorry. The deadly slash landed on the priestess in an instant. Blood splattered everywhere. The holy light priestess, who had been guarded in the center, suddenly had a gruesome gash across her neck. They seemed to have sensed something off. Eli and Keto turned around almost at the same time and caught the final moments of the priestess before her death. Shock and grief overwhelmed them. They couldn't believe what was happening right before their eyes. "Run!" The priestess's lips moved slightly. She forced out that one word, then thud. A jet of blood spurted from her neck, sending her head flying into the air. When the head hit the ground, the despair and fear were still frozen on its face. Eli and Keto froze on the spot at that moment. They stared blankly at the priestess's corpse on the ground. Boundless grief and rage filled their hearts. The blood
Stained Eli and Keto's furious, despairing faces red.
Keto's roar echoed through the night, like a wounded beast, furious and despairing. His eyes were bloodshot, as if burning with raging flames. He stared fixed at the darkness ahead, as if he could devour everything there whole. "Come out right now. You damn bastard! Monster, I'm gonna kill you!" He roared at the top of his lungs, his voice brimming with endless fury and hatred. But the only response he got was the howl of the wind and the rustle of leaves swaying in the breeze. It was dead silent all around, as if the whole world had fallen into a deep sleep. Kido's roars echoed through the empty night, sounding more and more desolate and hopeless. "Damn it, damn it! Damn it!" Kido cursed 3 times in a row. His voice was full of unbearable pain and regret. "Come out, show yourself. Kill me!" He knew that the death of his 2 companions was all his fault, for acting recklessly against everyone's advice. If it wasn't for him, insisting on entering this dangerous area, they never would have met such a terrible fate. Why? Kido couldn't understand. How did things end up like this? Was he really in the wrong? His companions had fallen one after another right in front of him, and he hadn't even caught a glimpse of the attacker. Am I gonna die? I'm gonna die, aren't I? Maybe dying isn't so bad. That thought flashed through Kido's mind for a second. That's right. People will just mock me if I go back. A loser who can't even protect his own teammates. What's the point of being alive anyway? Sings another flash of blades sliced through the air. Chapter 29, Death. Out of body? Captain, we... Just then, Eli summoned up her courage and lifted her head, wanting to persuade the captain to calm down. But when she looked up, she saw a horrifying scene unfold before her eyes. A thin line of blood quietly appeared on the captain's neck, like a venomous red snake, glaringly bright in the dark night. Eli's eyes went wide with terror. She knew exactly what that bloodstain meant. It was the mark of death. The mark left by that monster. The expression on his face was still frozen in a rage-fueled twist. His eyes were wide open. He died with regrets unfulfilled. Right at that moment, a dull, wet squelch sounded. The captain's head rolled right off his shoulders. Warm, sticky liquid spurted out, splattering all over Eli's face. She clapped a hand over her mouth in horror. She couldn't believe she was witnessing such a bloody scene. Kido's body slowly collapsed to the ground. His blood seeped into the dark night, forming a patch of glaring bright red. Watching her companions die one after another right in front of her, Eli completely lost her cool and rationality. Without even a second of hesitation, she left her companions' corpses behind and ran for the edge of the forest. Goblins, no way. That's no goblin at all. That's a monster. A cold, ruthless monster. There's no way we can't win against that. Even the strongest captain in the team is dead. I'm the only one left, and I'm the weakest. How could I possibly win? Run! She had to run! I never should have gotten mad and ignored my sister's advice and run away from home. If I hadn't run away, I never would have become an adventurer. And if I wasn't an adventurer, I wouldn't be here right now. No, it's all the captain's fault. If he'd listened to me at the start, we never would have run into this monster. Sister Lee wouldn't have died either. It's all his fault. So please don't kill me. I don't want to die yet, Eli screamed in despair, begging for her life, but the only being that could hear Eli's cries was debating whether to kill her or not. After only a moment's hesitation, Yayan decided to kill Eli. What Eli didn't know was, the second she turned her back to Yayan, she was already dead. Shing, a flash of blade sliced cleanly across Eli's neck, along with the thud of her head hitting the ground. That familiar world notification sound echoed in Yayan's mind again. Congratulations on killing a human. You have gained 1 strength attribute point. Congratulations on killing a human. Based on the effect of your predation skill, you have acquired the human skill, Physique Enhancement. Yayan hung upside down from the tree, staring at the corpses on the ground. No trace of emotion on his face. They were clearly so strong, but they let their emotions get the better of them so easily. If I had fought these 4 head-on, Yayan wouldn't stand a single chance of winning. No, even that muscular guy alone could have taken me down easily. What a shame for them. Yayan is a killer, an assassin. He never fights anyone head-on before he's absolutely sure he can win. That's his rule for assassination. Never take on a mission you aren't sure you can pull off. Once you make your move, you have to make sure it's a 100% success. Besides, he didn't plan to kill them in the first place. But for some reason, these people tried to kill him the second they saw him. Did Yanar do something to upset them? Yayan tilted his head in confusion, muttering to himself. He didn't remember ever meeting these people before. Could they be assassins just like him? That would explain why they attacked first. but it doesn't matter anyway. Since they came here intent on killing him, then it's only fair that he kills all of them, right? That's what Mom taught him. If you go into a fight planning to kill someone, you better be prepared to get killed yourself. Yayan climbed down from the tree trunk and started looting the spoils of war. Soon, all the adventurers' belongings were stuffed into a large bag by Yayan. The haul was pretty good. If I bring all this back, Mom will definitely be happy. As for the stuff on the goblins, there's nothing worth taking anyway. They're dirt poor. Not long after Yayan left, another team of adventurers passed by. Fiona frowned. Looking at the goblin corpses on the ground, and the corpses of the goblin squad. What? How did this happen? Did they kill each other? Fiona asked in confusion. But Keto was a silver-ranked adventurer. There's no way he would lose to these goblins. Could there have been another goblin squad that left already? Looking at the completely looted scene, Dita voiced his doubt. Maurice walked over to examine the goblin corpses on the ground, as well as the corpses of Keto's team. No, judging by the wounds on their bodies, it was done by a single person. It was clean and neat, killed with a single strike. Morris frowned. He mused that it was an extremely sophisticated assassination technique. Assassination technique? Dita stroked his chin. He seemed to be lost in thought. How could this be? On the other side, Amy stared at her younger brother on the ground. Her face was deathly pale. She stood frozen in place, dumbfounded. Fiona, standing nearby, hesitated to speak. She had no idea what to say to comfort her. Boom! The next second, terrifying magic power erupted from Amy's body. Damn it. Amy's originally cute face twisted with rage. I will kill that goblin for sure. He better not let me find him. Or else. Amy raised her fist and slammed it into the ground. She snarled in vent. I will make you regret ever being born into this world. Boom! The ground cracked and caved in. Dust and smoke billowed everywhere. As the smoke cleared, centered where Amy's fist had struck, a 1-meter radius crater was left behind. Seeing this, Fiona unconsciously took 2 steps back. It's weird no matter how many times you see it, right? This kind of monstrous strength. And it's coming from a priestess who serves the gods, no less. Forget serving the gods. No one would even want her around. Even Dita, the martial artist standing nearby, after witnessing this power, twitched the corner of his mouth involuntarily. Sometimes I really don't know who's actually the one that needs protecting here. I don't want to die. Run, keep running. Ellie didn't know how long she had been running. She had no idea how much time had passed. She just kept running like that. She wasn't dead. Or was she? Then what was that lying on the ground? A corpse. Her corpse. Ellie was looking at her own dead body. At that moment, the voice of the world echoed in her mind. Your exclusive skill, astral projection, has been activated successfully. Original body detected to be no longer usable. Scanning for nearby vessels. Damaged vessel detected. Initiating regression. Suddenly, a powerful suction force pulled her in, and the direction it was coming from was the barely breathing body of a goblin. No, stop! Ellie screamed. Right as she screamed, a tiny soul was devoured by her. The next moment when she woke up, she had already turned into a goblin. Ellie heard her older sister's voice. Ellie was overjoyed, but when she saw that her body was a goblin's, she didn't hesitate at all. She turned and left immediately. They'll kill me. Why? Why did this have to happen? Chapter 30, Return. Questioning from the Goblin Leaders. Yayan was in high spirits. A heavy large sack slung over his shoulder. He walked steadily past a pile of goblin corpses. As he made his way through, every time he stepped over a corpse, a dull thud echoed out. However, the strong stench of blood clinging to Yayan attracted many greedy wolves. Their eyes glinted with malice. Saliva dripped from their jaws. They clearly saw Yayan as a delicious meal. But for Yayan at this moment, these wolves were just a minor distraction on the way. He didn't take these threats seriously at all. Very soon, Yayan arrived at the entrance of the goblin nest. A group of short, stumpy, ugly, ferocious goblins were busy guarding the entrance. Some held spears in their hands. Others carried huge axes on their shoulders. Their eyes were filled with viciousness and cunning. Among them, other goblins were lining up. to register items with the higher-ranked goblins called goblin leaders, for record purposes. These goblin leaders, though their appearance was similar to low-ranked goblins, they just stood a little straighter, and their intelligence was on par with humans. They understood basic arithmetic, and this basic arithmetic was more than enough for their needs. As far as they were concerned, they were respectively in charge of managing low-ranked goblins and coordinating all kinds of affairs. Some goblin leaders were carefully recording patrol intelligence. Others were carefully counting the spoils of war. Others were responsible for exchanging shells as rewards for the low-ranked goblins. It was dusk at this time. The afterglow of the setting sun spilled over the nest entrance, casting over this blood-soaked, violence-ridden land an eerie touch of beauty. Groups of goblins returned one after another. Some carried prey on their shoulders. Others had packs slung on their backs. Their faces were filled with satisfaction and pride. The entire nest entrance was bustling with activity, as if a grand celebration was taking place. Some goblins could even be described as loaded. Bits and pieces of prey remains hung all over their bodies, looking both savage and utterly greedy. This group of goblins appeared before his eyes in an entirely different light. They were no longer just simple plunderers. They were more like merchants returning with full cargoes. Among them, some goblins were followed by one or two trembling women. These women were like captured prey, dragged forward mercilessly. Their faces wore all kinds of expressions. Some had their eyes closed in despair. Others bit their lower lips in agony. Still others let out faint whimpers. The sounds echoed through the silent forest, making them sound especially desolate. And among this crowd of goblins, one figure stood out particularly. It was Yayan carrying that huge sack. It was all alone. He didn't have any women with him like the other goblins, nor was he traveling with other goblins. His huge sack was extremely heavy, as if it was filled with something valuable, making him look like he was struggling a lot as he walked. The other goblins all cast strange looks at Yayan, looks of confusion, curiosity, and even disgust. What's up with that goblin? Why is he the only one coming back? Beats me. Don't tell me he bailed on the others. And the rest of the goblins went off to have fun. Oh, I remember now. That one, isn't that the goblin that killed so many goblin pups? What? That's the guy. I get it. He's getting picked on. That's why he's carrying such a huge load. Humph. Some goblins shot Yayan disdainful looks. Serves him right for getting bullied. He killed so many of our kind. No idea why the boss let him live. Ugh, the general is too soft-hearted, that's why. Said the pup didn't know any better. Forgave him. Some goblins even deliberately led a woman, slave, and rammed her towards Yayan. The black-haired woman crashed straight towards Yayan. The woman had thick jet-black hair, messily draped over her shoulders. Her clothes were torn to rags, exposing large swathes of fair skin. Her skin was unusually pale, like fine jade under the moonlight, and her features were sweet and lovely, like a blooming lily flower. She gave off a vibe that made you want to have her right then and there. Of course, faced with such a deliberate provocation, Yayan dodged it easily. If he wasn't holding something in his hands, Yayan would have killed that goblin with a single slash already. What's wrong with you? Scared of a woman. The leading goblin taunted. Watching Yayan dodge, he laughed mockingly. He clearly thought that Yayan was so bewitched by the woman's beauty that he lost his composure like that. Then he dragged the black-haired woman towards the cave. As the black-haired woman entered, she even looked back at Yayan with a seductive expression. This guy is no ordinary person. Almost the moment she lunged forward, Yayan sensed something was wrong right away. It's not so much that this woman was knocked over by the armed spirit, as that she deliberately lured the armed spirit into ramming into her. Anyway, there was some sort of weird, mysterious power at work. Oh? You're thinking about that woman, huh? The goblin looked at Yayan, who was staring fixedly at the woman who had just entered the cave, and started jeering. What's there to even think about? Back in her lair, she still has her elf mother with her, you know. Ha ha ha! Yayan ignored the taunts from these goblins, and walked straight ahead. Just as he was about to step into the lair, an old goblin chief called out to stop him. Hey, you there, goblin? Yayan was about to ignore him, but was stopped by the guard goblins at the entrance. The chief is calling you. Seeing this, Yayan frowned slightly. He turned around and heard rapid pattering footsteps. The goblin chief Dong, who had called out to him just now, had already run right up to Yayan. I called you just now. Why didn't you stop? It seemed he felt his authority had been challenged, so Chief Dong was extremely furious. A group of adolescent goblins behind him were watching the scene like it was a show. Me? Yayan pointed at himself. You didn't hear me. The goblin chief frowned, his face darkening. I didn't hear any goblin calling my name. Yayan replied with a serious expression, tilting his head in confusion. You... Chief Dong trembled with rage at Yayan's words. He was just about to lift the crutch in his hand when a terrifying killing intent washed over Chief Dong's entire body in an instant. The goblin was secretly shocked. What a terrifying killing aura. He shifted his gaze to Yayan, who was already fully prepared for a fight. If this goblin dared to make even one more move, his head would roll off his shoulders the very next second. You! Are you trying to kill me? Chief Dong put down his crutch, forcing himself to look calm. But Yayan didn't pay him any attention at all, and didn't say a single extra word. His ice-cold eyes were fixed straight on Chief Dong, scaring Chief Dong so much that he didn't dare say another word. But just because he didn't dare speak up, didn't mean the onlooking goblins would keep their mouths shut. Hey, Chief, don't be scared of this brat. Go get him. Teach this little punk a lesson. Show him how high the sky is, and how thick the earth is. Right now, Chief Dong, who was being stared down by that killing intent-filled gaze of Yayan's, only wanted to take all these jeering low-rank goblins and beat every last one of them to a pulp. Chapter 31, Demon Morrigan's Whip Strike. Chief Dong cursed inwardly. Damn it, this brat is out for my life, not yours. Try switching places with me and see how brave you are. And this brat's aura is way too overpowered. What's more, he even faintly felt a suppression coming from the very depths of his bloodline. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Impossible, this must be an illusion. I'm a high-rank goblin. Apart from the general, only captain-class goblins outrank me. But this brat came out of the low-rank goblin breeding quarters. There's no way he's captain class.